Attend, O reader, our tale of wonder. Welcome back to Paper Cuts, everybody, where once again, by author permission, we're going to be reading Wearing the Cape by Marion G. Harmon. This has so far been a really delightful tale of a young girl who suddenly has superpowers foisted upon her by a chance of fate and is now doing her best to navigate not only superheroic society but also standard human high society as she is currently about to attend her mother's foundation, the Faith Corrigan Foundation, their annual Christmas ball. Uh, and hopefully nothing goes awry for our lovely protagonist. Yeah, but this being a superhero story, you know their normal life is going to have some wrenches thrown in it. Let's dive right in, shall we? With chapter 26. The Faith Corrigan Foundation's annual Christmas ball has a special treat in store for us this year. While celebrated heroes have been on the guest list many times in the past, this year the Sentinels are the guests of honor. In the face of public and media criticism of their handling of the freak show riot, the mistress of our festivities has thrown her support behind our city's chief protectors. And since the team has not one, but two new young members, their presence brings more excitement and glamour to what is already destined to be a brilliant night. Let's hope our hearts can stand it. Terry Reinhold, City Watch. Wait, entire toolboxes, huh? Not sure I catch that one. Gariki. The Christmas ball is always held in the second week of December in the Grand Ballroom at the Drake Hotel, the landmark hotel at the top of the Miracle Mile. Companies and organizations donate large sums in order to have their Christmas trees line the front of the hotel, and even larger sums for the available spots inside. The best caterers provide food and drink at a cost and service gratis. Simply to be named on the program ensures their business for the next year. Any state or city politician with a campaign coming up sells his soul beforehand to be on the guest list. Well, I don't think Mom makes them sign in blood anyway. Any CEO, Hollywood star, or sports figure who calls Chicago his native city makes the annual pilgrimage. It's a pretty big deal. Wrench or two thrown in their lives. Yeah, there are whole toolboxes thrown in Hope's life. Having read this book before, a lot happens very quickly to this character. Although a lot happens generally to like the entire ensemble cast. All of the other people in the book that are not the POV character. It's a superhero story and it just kind of goes that way. Anyway, we arrived at the red carpet in our own ways. Atlas and I flew in together while Blackstone, Nimbus, and Rush simply appeared beside us. The others pulled up in a limo as we all assembled at the head of the carpet. Really? My internet has been being very, that's the thing, is the internet itself is actually very high speed when it works, but it's been very spotty. I'm still working on fixing the internet connection around here. And I know it is not doing my stream any favors to have it randomly doing this a lot, actually. It was not you this time, thankfully. Uh, our internet's being a bit rude. We should be good now. Uh, Provided nothing proceeds to explode. Yeah, at this point, I have some equipment lying around that's it's essentially a wired to wireless converter that I might be best off just using and sticking through a hole in the doorway or something, rather than trying to jump through the hoops of modifying the antennae on my existing wireless card. Really, the best answer. We should be good instant skip now. Yeah, should being the operative word there. Really, I'd be best off to, you know, do this from my laptop next to the wireless connection, or from my laptop in such a way that there's a wired connection. But that also opens up me essentially monopolizing the common space in the apartment for up to 3 to 4 hours, which is not great. I don't like a lot. So we'll see. It should stabilize. If it happens again, I'm running an ad while it struggles. Anyway, the others pulled up in a limo as we all assembled at the head of the carpet. Chicago finally saw its first snow, and tonight it fell thickly, making brilliant halos along the old ironwork street lamps. A group of Dickensian a group of Dickensian carolers held station at the door. Artemis looked stiff. "Try not to be the ghost of Christmas future," I whispered, leaning in. She smothered a laugh and glared at me, but relaxed. Sort of. Cameras flashed as we walked the carpet and climbed the steps to the lobby. Every Christmas, Mom turned most of the Drake's event spaces, the Grand Ballroom, the Walton Room, the French Room, and the Gold Coast Room, into a winter court where the glitter bugs of Chicago could flock to glitter for each other and the privileged public. I'd always loved watching them, and now I laughed. I was a glitter bug this time. We all were. Atlas looked down at me with a raised eyebrow. I just smiled and shook my head. Then we were through the ballroom doors and being announced. Yeah, that's fair. It would be justifiable unless I get the text sorted out. Again, thinking, uh, I'm really thinking about, like, I'm genuinely wondering how much work it would be to have, like, a spare set of these. The antennae for my Wi-Fi card is the big thing. You know what? I'm gonna write that down. That's my superhero team, Old Ironworks Street Lamps. Just Old Ironworks actually wouldn't be a half bad superhero team name, come to think. The Street Lamps are your sidekick team. Think like the Teen Titans or Young Justice. Oh, they sell replacement antennas for super cheap, actually. Yeah, that would not cost me hardly anything at all. I would definitely be able to, like, buy a set of these and, kind of take them apart. Yeah, that wouldn't be too bad. I could probably. Yeah, I could do that. That'd be easy. Duly noted. I might have to get. Yeah, I'll look at that after stream. I got my parents set up on a mesh system. I'll send you the link. That's fair. A mesh router actually wouldn't be the worst idea, or even a power line repeater just in this room would solve the problem because it's just struggling with wall penetration is all. A power line repeater would actually probably be the way to go because then I could just throw it in. I have loose plug. I have a spare couple plugs around here somewhere, and just throw one in next to the router that's plugged in, and then it would just work. Because I know the folks downstairs aren't going to need that. It would basically do the same thing as running all the wiring. Yeah, I'll have to think about that. Anyway, the story we were reading. Atlas looked down at me with a raised eyebrow. I just smiled and shook my head, and then we were through the ballroom doors and being announced. We were dressed to impress. The Harlequin wore one of Andrew's special creations, an ice blue and white confection. She looked very Regency Christmas in breeches and knee socks, big buckled shoes, a festive waistcoat under a tightly tailored jacket, lace at her wrists, and a cravat at her throat, with a blue domino mask to match. Chakra dazzled in a crimson silk and gold thread sari over a green midriff bearing choli. Atlas had stuck with his traditional uniform, but at least it was a new and shiny one. Blackstone dressed in his usual elegant black tux and opera cape, a sprig of holly in his lapel. Ajax was bareheaded in a stylized version of his armor, and Rush wore a new red jumpsuit. Artis- Andrew had sewn Artemis a night black silk and velvet version of her costume, and I'd come in a formal creation he'd designed for me. A sapphire blue one piece made out of velvet, with a high neck and long arms over a tiny skirt and matching white silk cape. It reminded me of a figure skater's costume. But as festively dressed as we all were, Atlas had us earbugged and at action stations. If Syjack wanted another crowd to control for maximum effect, this could be it after all. Introducing the Sentinels! Every head in the fantastically decorated chamber turned. Ladies and gentlemen, may I present the Sentinels? The announcer took us in order of seniority. Atlas, Blackstone, Ajax, Rush, Nimbus, Chakra, the Harlequin, Astra, and Artemis. He could have been a drill sergeant, but at least he didn't sound like a ringmaster. And now, in the center ring, the amazing... No. No cameras flashed, the media didn't get beyond the front carpet. With some exceptions, I grinned. But with some exceptions, after all. I grinned, seeing Terry Reinhold in the crowd. Then we were being introduced to our hostess. If Rush's sidekick isn't today's Tom Sawyer a riot, does Rush have a sidekick? I don't remember if we ever see Rush having a sidekick, but Tom Sawyer wouldn't be a bad name for a for a sidekick for Rush. Although then, if you think about it, like you would Rush as a character would be infringing upon because like it's implied that all of the normal pop culture pre event that started causing superheroes in the late 2000s in setting like all of the pop culture is still there because like they have Michael Jackson, so obviously they also have Rush, so like would Rush be able to file like a like they wouldn't be able to file a copyright suit because Rush is a word, but would they be able to file a trademark suit? Like they wouldn't be able to file a trademark suit against the hero directly, but like would they be able to file for trademark in like the broader space, like as they're producing like marketing and everything, or like would they have to negotiate with the record label or something? But then again, Tom Sawyer is like a public domain character, so like they could argue, oh yeah, hypothetical that I could stay off topic for probably 30 minutes with that I wasn't expecting. The book. Then we were being introduced to our hostess. Tall and elegant, Mom sparkled beautifully. My fingers itched to adjust Dad's bow tie. Tracy joined Rush, and Blackstone found his daughter and son-in-law. We made introductions all round, then Mom began working her magic, leading us off in ones or twos to see someone you have to meet, pairing each of us conversationally with somebody important. Her social intelligence was impeccable. Ajax and Nimbus stayed together, as did Chakra and Blackstone, while Atlas, Rush, and the Harlequin soloed. She teamed me with Artemis with a silently mouthed stick together for me, like I had to be told. If they get on Twitch, I'd have words. That's fair. It's funny because like there would have been a live streaming component to the whole villain rap culture that's like run as like a subculture in this setting. If this had come out like even just a few years later, if this had come out around like 2015, 2016, there would have been villain streamers in setting for sure. Although that does make you wonder, like Twitch wasn't structured for like IRL streams for a long time. Like when it was Justin TV, sure, but then like they pivoted to gaming, so it does make you wonder like what sort of live streaming there would be. If you think about it, what like superhero culture in an era of live streaming, there's got to be like a million years worth of like grainy cell phone footage of Atlas flying places and like it's just very interesting. It's like something that we don't like outside of modern comics that are set in a modern era. I haven't seen a lot of tackling of like live streaming culture and social media in general in superhero stories. It's usually just kind of glossed over or like mentioned as a negative plot point for when like a hero flubs a save or something. They're getting lambasted on social media. But if you think about the framing in this setting, they're kind of framed as combination celebrities and cops a little bit. Like there's celebrities and EMTs and cops all rolled into one. The way that it's framed in this setting, which is not a bad way to approach a modern superhero setting, but like it does make you wonder, like would there be villain rappers on TikTok promoting their new song? Like would they hype up like I have a crime coming in the next couple weeks? Like would they hype up I have a crime coming in the next 3 weeks? I'm not gonna tell you when, but then like if they get caught, then that's clear premeditation. Like would they be advised not to do that? Would only amateurs do that? Would it be seen to be amateurish? Like there's gotta be, if we project this setting forward 15, 20 years, uh there's gotta be like a superhero. Like would superheroes be required to wear like a body cam or something? Would someone monetize the body cam footage from their suit? There's a whole lot of moving parts that you've pointed out to me that I'm like, oh, I didn't think about this. And who knows, this series did continue for another 4 books that I haven't read yet, so maybe it does address all this as time moves on. Oh man, I haven't seen Free Guy in forever. I saw Free Guy like right when it came out in the theater. Great movie. Anyway, that's where we were. We were making introductions. Artemis and Astra are paired up together to make sure they don't wander off. Artemis and I found ourselves in a group that, among others, included Judge Thomas Halder, Alderman Alexander Stelmach, and Miss Laurie. Thanks, Mom. A Judge Halder was a very tall and thin African American with a salt and pepper beard. Alderman Stelmach didn't reach his heights, but certainly beat him in mass. Neither looked particularly pleased to see us, so I fired the opening shot. Judge Alderman, it's an honor to meet you both. Judge Halder frowned. Likewise, I'm especially pleased to meet your newest member. He nodded to Artemis. Although, he continued in his careful, measured tones, I'm curious to know how a vigilante received city approval to join the team. I smiled sweetly. I'm sure you know how it works, Your Honor. Blackstone wanted her skill set. I smiled at Artemis. And she has promised to be good. With our city liaison reviewing every after-action report, you can be sure that both of us will be. And wasn't that a fun activity I'd never imagined when picturing the life of a superhero? I think platforms would be forced to prohibit positive angles on crimes. Criminals could go on about themselves, but nothing that would end up in court. That makes sense, like having that in the terms of service so that you can't really build a brand off of just your villainy alone. You would have to build your brand off of your own gregariousness. Like in the same way that most streamers build a personal brand out of themselves. That makes sense. And like you'd say, "Oh, but what if there's a villain streaming platform?" That wouldn't last mechanically. You know, they would constantly be tied up in like legal fees and stuff. But who knows? Maybe there's like some supervillain somewhere that would keep funding them. There's got to be a Lex Luthor with this many Supermen. Anyway, I understand that my rules of engagement have changed, Your Honor, Artemis said more seriously. But most of what I did could be called private investigation work anyway. Most? Most, he swirled his eggnog. Young lady, I'll have you know that I take a rotation on the committee that reads those reports. I'll take an even greater interest in them in the future. Our streets must be kept safe, but the law must be preserved. But now humor twinkled in the judge's eye, and Artemis thankfully caught it. I'll keep that in mind, Your Honor. See that you do, he smiled. That's all very well, Alderman Stelmach cut in. But what about really doing your jobs? We certainly pay you enough for it. I blinked at the direct cut, which earned another frown from the judge. Before I could think of a reply, Miss Laurie stepped in. And to what dereliction would you be referring, Brian? Thank you, Miss Laurie. The Freak Zone riot, of course, he barked, but now I was ready. Alderman, may I take your hand? He seemed leery at that, but could hardly back down. I took his large, warm hand in mine and made sure I had a firm but gentle grip. Now, Alderman, I could certainly restrain you, couldn't I said softly. He tried to take back his hand, and of course it didn't budge. But now Judge Halder next to you can do anything he wants, can't he? I asked before he could get vocally indignant. If I must restrain you, I can't do much should he decide to, say, leave with Mrs. Davis's jewels, now can I? I let go of his hand and smiled up at him. I can stop a tank, Alderman, but I can only stop one tank at a time. We faced a mob of more than 1,500 mind-controlled riders with just our powers. The only teammate equipped with the power to safely deal with the whole crowds without hurting anyone did. The rest of us did what we could to protect bystanders until more heroes and Chicago's finest could arrive. And we are working with the police department to develop effective crowd control techniques now, although we'll never be called on to use them if the Metropolitan Police can be mobilized first. And so on it went. Share some chit-chat, politely respond to questions or criticism, move on. Mom made her continual rounds, smoothly breaking up groups that stayed together too long with the need to make introductions elsewhere, keeping us circulating while pursuing her own goals. Magnus here has reminded me that you can in fact get emotes, not only by paying some volume of money, I believe it's $4.99, a month, but you can also get it for free if you have Amazon Prime. If you link your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account and activate, I believe it's still called Twitch Gaming, Amazon Gaming, something like that, you get one free sub a month, and you could use it here to get such delightful emotes as the Magnus emote. It's an option available to you. Greeky says, it would perfectly set up a criminal predicting crimes by their villains to get credit for good work, but of course be totally behind it too. That's such a great, like, if you wanted to play, like, a aggressively chess master villain like that, have only certain villains be taking the fall and be predicted. That's a really great idea. That actually would be a really good idea for a big bad if you were to say pick up the tabletop RPG based on this game. That'd be a really good idea for a big bad in this setting. Like have villain rap have steamrolled into like an online like a more online phenomena taking after the way that like musicians now have to do uh their own record promotion on TikTok and have it lean in to all that uh and have like a specific like Lex Luthorine villain, someone with very deep pockets who rarely does field operation, um have them, maybe if you wanted to really lean into current events, you could have them buy out, actual TikTok out from under the parent company that owns it, and have it lean farther into uh like villain rap promotion and like try to attract villains and then use the algorithmic data that you get from that to act as a prediction, and when to keep like a specific class of villains in power and stop newer villains that could crowd out older villains. Oh, that'd be a really fun idea to run with. I actually like that a lot. I might keep that. That'd be a really good one. If not in the if not in the Fate system, that the Fate system version of this game, that'd be a really good one to run in masks. Actually, I think it'd be especially good in masks if you're leaning in on the TikTok alike angle because of the because by and large TikTok is populated by people who are relatively young. So if you wanted to take that angle and lean into it with the teenage hero aspect of masks, I think it would work really well there. That's not half bad of an idea. I'm often tempted to try and write and run write and run a write and run a game that then proceeds to become like a polished product afterward. Kind of have everyone at the table agree that we're all basically acting as an improv writer's room, which I kind of take a writer's room approach to playing tabletop games anyway. I like to think that, oh, of course the stream's down while the ad is running. I'm sorry, gang. Let me see once if I can fix this. Could we please work? Okay, it should be back in about 15-20 seconds. Okay, you mostly just missed me rattling on about the concept that Gariki mentioned of having like a chess master type villain, uh, having certain villains taking the fall for certain things, and then me spinning out and around talking about how fun that would be to have be the big bad for a game like a tabletop game, and then having a tabletop game, you know, act as a writer's room. I think would be really fun. But anyway, let's get back to the book, shall we? I don't know how she keeps an I don't know how she keeps an eye on everything at once, but I'm pretty sure it involves spies, perhaps among the catering staff. She also kept me clear of the laughing group that formed around the bees. The bees and I were good again, but all I needed to do was stand beside them, and costume enhancements or not, people would remark how much I looked like Hope. You miss tabletop games? That's fair. It's hard to find time in, 4 to 8 people's schedules to get it all to work. But when you can manage to pull off scheduling, it's really fun. Like I said, this setting is actually available as a Fate setting by the same author, even. So if you need a superhero game, this actually wouldn't be a half bad one. And I've been looking for something that kind of fills the hole above Masks, because like Masks is very focused on like a Teen Titans, a Young Justice, and X-Men. Teenage teams with teenage problems. And like, what if you want to play a more like, what if you want to play a different age demographic than that? And I've heard a lot of really good things about like Mutants and Masterminds and the Marvel system, but like I think taking taking a game like Fate, where it's very like narratively focused, quick rolling, and running in this setting in particular, I think works really well. I think broadly this is a very good take on an indie superhero setting. Like we've been getting to know it as we go, but I really enjoy it. Yeah, Fate, for context, is an RPG engine. If you don't know it, it's the one where you roll d6s that have pluses and minuses on them, like six-sided dice that have pluses and minuses on them instead of numbers. Which you can play it with normally numbered dice. It's just easier with a plus and minus dice. It's very much. It's very. It's. I haven't played it, but I've been reading the rules in case I want to pick up this game and run with it. And it seems like a really good system, honestly, and it's very popular. It's got a lot of, in the same way that Apocalypse World then has a lot of themed games. set in various settings. Fate has a lot of themed games that are set in uh, various settings. This one included. But good catch, Kuriki. That's Fate is the core system we're talking about here, and then there is specifically a wearing the cape Fate skin. If I can get my screen to load here, I can show you it all. Yeah, wearing the cape, the role-playing game, which it's a really good setting to it's a really good setting to work in. There's a lot of really like there's a lot of characters that play into existing superhero tropes, but you uh oh, Barlow's Guide is an expansion pack to wearing the cape. That's fun, actually. I didn't know that. Yeah, anyway, this is the game I'm talking about. Wearing the Cape actually has an RPG set in the same setting as the books, and it uses Fate. And I've heard good things. I've heard actually a lot of good things about Fate in particular, and uh, I actually was poking around in a Discord I was in talking about tabletop RPGs, and someone actually mentioned wearing the cape. They were like, "Hey, you've been reading this? This I actually played a little bit of it." Da, 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 da. So, needless to say, if you like this book, you'll probably like that tabletop RPG. But I digress. Da, 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 da. Hope is trying to defend her secret identity by not being seen with people from her civilian life. Annabeth winked at me from behind Dane's back on her way to the buffet. I sighed and smiled, and I would smile all night. One group Mom steered me into surprised me. Volt had decided to attend the Christmas ball despite being a Chicago transplant to Hollywood who rarely came back. His dark curls and square-jawed profile were recognizable anywhere, even if he'd softened a bit, out of shape since his days as a silver screen superhero. A minor actor before his breakthrough during the event, he'd leveraged his A-class powers into a brief but very successful Hollywood career before becoming the president of California's new superhuman union and going into politics. He campaigned for increased unionization of superhuman workers and was probably in town talking to his Chicago counterparts. Okay, so the superheroes are unionized. Are the sidekicks unionized? Are the goons unionized? Do the villains have a union? Admittedly, I'm cribbing the idea of goons having a union off of someone from TikTok, but I mean, if you think about it, like generally being a villain goon is a very like hazardous situation to be in. You know, it's a very hazardous workplace filled with very specific hazards that aren't really, you know, handled by normal workplace laws, so you probably would want to be unionized if you were a villain goon. Anyway, I could spend way too much time talking about that. The Sentinels and the city CAIs had resisted unionization. I've been surprised to learn we had a purely local and voluntary association instead, and I wondered if Volt took it personally. He rudely ignored us beyond our introductions, which showed lousy political instincts on his part. It certainly didn't help him with the rest of the group. Two of Mom's biggest captive philanthropists and Don Christie, best-selling novelist and one of Chicago's favorite sons. Yeah, it's kind of odd that this guy is not pushing with the biggest heroes, like the biggest set of capes in the city. If they unionize, most other CAIs would probably follow. Weird choice. Anyway, I could I could spend way too long talking about that. Don gave me a wink of his own when we left, and I laughed. It was probably an invitation, a complete charmer. He always took rooms and never ended the night alone. After an hour or so, I felt confident leaving Artemis alone. Well, not alone. She'd formed a court of young men enthralled by her dark mystery. Atlas offered me a cup of punch. Should we warn them she bites? I accepted with a smile. Would they care? He looked around. Since you're unsquired at the moment, would you do me the honor? Holding his hand out, he nodded to the dance floor. I laughed and curtsied, passing my cup to a server. One thing Mom does to keep the ball lively is employ a band with an orchestra. This year she snagged the Celtic band Blackmore's Night and bring in real ballroom dancers to add life to the floor. Atlas surprised me with his skills. He tucked his cape around the arm holding my waist so that mine was the only cape billowing out in our spins as we twirled through a Viennese waltz, weaving our way through the other dancers. Eye level with his chest, I was too small to make a good partner, but we received a lot of attention as we spun around the floor. When the waltz ended, with a scattering of applause, I let him steer me out onto a balcony, empty because it was freezing cold. We felt fine, of course. In fact, I felt great. Well, I think you've had too much eggnog, Atlas observed, but his blue eyes sparkled and his sharp face softened with a smile. Hardly, I laughed, twirling about the balcony. Strictly virgin nog for me. Checking the perimeter, are we? I love the Christmas season. In our house, the Christmas tree went up right after Thanksgiving and stayed up till Epiphany, officially the last day of Christmastide. I'd miss that at the Dome. All the trees, lights, candles, Christmas music from the band and orchestra, and enough fresh pine boughs to make the ballroom smell like an alpine forest continued to make me giddy. Still twirling, I started humming the 12 Days of Christmas. Atlas caught my wrist and pulled me over to the stone balustrade on which he sat me. I think you need to stay out here for a few minutes, he said. I wiggled. The short skirt didn't completely cover my butt when I sat, and I felt the cold stone through my bottoms, even if it didn't affect me. I am not drunk. You think Mom would take the chance with a couple dozen underage guests? The glasses are coated and the server's threatened with death. I'm just happy. Very happy. I must say you've been amazing in there. I've been helping Mom out at these events since my debut. He looked a little wistful. That age, I was doing the rodeo circuit. I giggled. In what world is that fun? Texas. Each his own, I reckon. Can I ask you a personal question? Of course. We've been associating with your mother's foundation for years, and even though I don't go to a lot of these shindigs, I don't remember ever seeing you there. Oh, I looked down. He leaned on the balustrade beside me, watching the street as the snow fell silently. But tonight a Mrs. Laurie, a frightening woman, told me how unusual it was for you not to be here tonight. That your mother's number one at this kind of thing. He sneaked a sideways look at me, and his dimple appeared. Now, normally I have to fight off all the eligible women. Very least, they want to talk. More if I don't have an obvious date. And, well, I've got a good memory for faces, so why don't I remember yours? I realized I was sitting on my hands again and put them on my lap while they played with the hem of my skirt. I thought of playing it cool. Not everyone's a fan, after all. But instead, I gave him the truth. My best friend Shelley was an origin chaser. He straightened up. Was? I looked away. She died when I was 15, trying to get her breakthrough. She became one of those statistics, the one they usually list right next to the annual count of kids who do that. Sometimes I wonder how they keep the two separate. I'm sorry. I was kind of touchy about capes for a long time after that. Mom always knew the guest list, and if a super celebrity was going to be there, she let me leave before things started, or I'd manage from the back. The fact that she doesn't vet the list anymore is a huge deal for me, but you haven't been around recently. Shame on you. He'd already used his I'm sorry on the topic, and I didn't want him to repeat it, so I gave a convincing smile. I'm very good at them, after all. So, can I ask you something? Of course, he mimicked me. Where does a cowboy baggage handler turn superhero and learn how to dance? From his ex-wife. What? Why not? He owed me now. What happened to the two of you? Didn't you see it in the tabloids? I don't usually read the bottoms of bird cages. That earned him a laugh. That earned me a laugh. I was young and stupid. Teen heartthrob, married before I could legally drink. Jenny knocked me off my feet. Amazing, beautiful, glamorous. She married a superhero and got a working stiff, a cop with a cape. She never complained, and our connection launched her modeling and acting career. Didn't mind when it took her to Hollywood. Did mind when she had an affair. Back home, we think you should dance with the one that brought you. Oh, oh. He shrugged it aside. We made it easy for each other. Uncontested divorce, no juicy quotes for the press. Tabloid told stories of binge drinking, serial affairs, all fairy tales. Think we realized we didn't fit very well before she headed to L.A. after all. Well, she taught you to dance pretty good before she left. You should see my two-step. His voice got softer and he leaned in. Some other time. Dear God, were we flirting? Maybe I had gotten the wrong egg. He seemed to realize this too. He stepped back. I think I'll stay out here a few more minutes, I said quickly. You should go in and pay a little attention to Tracy. I saw Rush chatting up Olivia Sinclair when we slipped away. He winced. We came here to put out brush fires, not start another one. You'll be okay? You're asking someone who could dance naked at the North Pole? What did I just say? His lip twitched. Now that I'd pay to see. But I'll go. And he went. Once he was out of sight, I put my hot face in my hands. In the darkness out on the balcony, nobody could see out the ballroom windows, and that was a good thing. I had been in so much trouble. I wasn't alone very long before the balcony door opened, and to my surprise, Mrs. Laurie stepped out. There you are, dear. Your mother has been looking for you, and do cease perching up there. You look like a child. I quickly hopped down. Have you been guarding the door? Why ever would I do that? Thank you for earlier with the alderman. Then my brain caught up with me. My mother, I don't know. You really must stay away from the eggnog, dear. Your mother puts too much brandy in the bowl. Indeed, I suspect she raises the dosage as the night goes on. A few guests drive themselves home in any case. Do you think I'm stupid? No. Then don't insult my intelligence, Hope. I've known you since you were 12. Do you think a mask, a wig, and a little padding would fool me? I suppose not. Don't think I fooled Terry either. I'm the one who got him his invitation tonight, you know. After reading his column? Because of his column. I grinned wickedly. Now that he's inside of our charmed circle, he'll be nice. Well, he wasn't mean to begin with, just snarky, because he'll want to come back next year. You are your mother's child. How are you, my dear? I sighed. Apparently I'm young and stupid, which is to say I'm in love. Congratulations. Make sure you put a bridle on him. I understand since his divorce he's become quite the stallion. Mrs. Laurie. I covered my mouth and laughed. Actually, I'm not sure I even like him. We're very different. He's hard. Robert and I fought like cats and dogs over a great many things for 43 years. Let's go inside, dear. These old bones don't take Chicago winters like they used to. Oh, I'm so sorry. Don't be silly, dear. I'm the one who came outside. We re-entered the ballroom together, and I stayed away from the eggnog. Chapter 27. Today, President Touches Clouds gave a speech in Jerusalem commemorating the victims of the Caliphate War. In her speech, she reaffirmed the United States' support for Israeli occupation of the cleared West Bank, while at the same time reminding the NATO countries and Arab nations of their treaty obligations to continue to aid the displaced Palestinians in their absorption by Jordan, Syria, and the other former Caliphate states. The president of Iran released his own statement condemning U.S.-Israeli genocide and imperialism. December 18th, the Associated Press. Men have died from time to time, and worms have eaten them, but not for love. William Shakespeare's Twelfth Night. The ancient Greeks considered love a mental illness that led to suicide, homicide, betrayal, war, all sorts of fun. Whom the gods destroy, they first make mad, so the saying went. Cupid used a bow and arrow for good reason, and just look at Paris and Helen and the Trojan War if you don't believe me. They didn't have a single love story that ended well. My AP Western Civ teacher loved giving us eye-openers like that to show how differently other people thought about stuff we take for granted, and it always seemed to me that the Greeks knew what they were talking about. To them, Cupid would have been one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Well, if he'd needed a horse. At 13, I made the mistake of confessing my undying love to a classmate. He'd had the bluest eyes and curliest hair. That was the first time I'd heard the words, "You're like my kid sister." With the fairness of hindsight, his kid sister had been in my class, but and all but one of them. Uh, with the fairness of hindsight, his kid sister had been in my class, but all but one of my subsequent experiences were variations on that same theme. The one time a boy, Eric, ever showed a real romantic interest in me turned out he'd been trying to score big in the senior class's Don Juan game. Virgins were worth big points, after all. Megan saved me from that particular mistake, and Dane beat the crap out of Eric. So Cupid would drop me in my tracks every year or two, and I'd agonize between two horrible choices: let the object of my obsession know how I felt and get nicely, awkwardly, or brutally shot down, or keep my mouth shut while I went up in silent flames. In bed and hugging Super Poo, I did a late night rewind and review of all those moments on the balcony. They showed all the signs: lowered voices, opportunistic touching, close proximity, and playful, even sexual banter. And I'd responded, damn it. Why? Alright, 9 years wasn't that big a difference, and he was brave and sweet, and a divorced workaholic who threw his room key to the slut of the week. How'd I ever imagined he was cute? He's no Eric, my heart whispered as I stared at the ceiling. And he wasn't. He wasn't the perfect hero I'd had a tween teen crush on either. The man inside the muscle suit was someone very different. What I felt was different. Probably why Cupid had managed to ambush me. Probably. But I wasn't one of his pretty and easy Atlas girls either. And at the moment, he was my teacher and mentor. Didn't that just set off all sorts of alarm bells? I pictured Atlas and buried my face in Super Poo's cape. I really should have seen it coming this time. I exhibited all the symptoms: the awkwardness, impulsive playfulness, oversensitivity. So, what now? As I tossed and hugged my bear in the night, I came to the sad conclusion that this could only be another Silent Flames occasion. Cupid had gut shot me again, and as the shock wore off, it was starting to hurt like hell, but despite those moments at the ball, it just wasn't in the cards. Atlas wasn't Eric. He was no seducer of the innocent, but to him, I was just some kid. If he found out how I felt, I'd have to leave the state. I could live with it, at least until I finished my training. After that, maybe the Hollywood Knights would have me. Pooh got a little soaked during the night. As Samuel Johnson said, the prospect of hanging focuses the mind wonderfully. Thanks, AP Lit. In my experience, the certainty of hanging focuses my mind wonderfully on something else. I'm beginning to wonder if this is not just my ISP being very upset with me streaming. Who knows? I don't know, but like some nights we just don't have this problem at all, and sometimes we do. Again, I think I just need to this week work on solving the problem entirely. Really, what I could do is the easiest solution to this is turning off my camera, setting my microphone right here in my in the keyboard of my laptop, and just sitting with a blanket over my head in the common area next to the internet. But, things will happen. Maybe it'll sort itself out. There we go. But yeah, this is something that like I didn't really care for. This plot line that we're now getting into is something I didn't really care for on reading it as a teenager, but I'm interested to see how I feel about it reading it now, a bit older and with a bit more time to look back on. because I didn't really care for it initially. I was like, oh, of course they're gonna fall in love, but like I was not very fond of any romance subplot in anything at the time, and now I still kind of roll my eyes at them, but like some of them are done well enough that I like them. So I'm very curious to see how I feel about this, and it really, uh, there was like really this was the only major failing I thought this book had as a teen. So I'm very curious to see what I think of it in the here and now. Also, while we're taking a breather here, uh, I'd like to remind everyone that not only is this a podcast, but it's also a vodcast. I have a YouTube where we post stream VODs from these very streams live. So, well, on a slight delay every Saturday. In fact, I actually think I need to schedule them this weekend. They just recently ran out on the back end, so I need to fix that. But just friendly reminder, this is not the only thing I do here. I also stream on Tuesday nights. Variously, it's either a making or amending stream, a video game stream, or even some tabletop RPGs. I have been doing a lot of solo tabletop RPGs, and I think they're a lot of fun. Anyway, where were we here? Yes. In my experience, the certainty of hanging focuses my mind wonderfully onto something else. And I had plenty else to focus on. The ball had been a brilliant success. We'd schmoozed well, as Dad would say, and impressed the right people. But the brothers and the boys still lurked out there, and we intended to do everything we could to change that. For now, everything meant pretty much. For now, everything meant Artemis hunting by the light of the moon, planting bugs, listening in, misting through the night in search of incriminating activity or evidence, while Blackstone did whatever he does to try and get a handle on Skyjack. Meanwhile, we kept ourselves busy getting ready for the president's arrival. Shit! Rush swore as a freeze foam can burst all over his hands. The stuff set to the consistency of air-permeable rubber in seconds, and stuck to any reasonably smooth surface, so he wasn't really having fun. I laughed, and he gave me the finger, or tried to. It was stuck. Just wait till one pops on you, eh? He'd always called Atlas Big A, though not to his face, and he'd taken to calling me A. At least I wasn't Little A. You're just shaking them up too hard, I said. I gave mine a shake, popped the button on top, and aimed it away from me. It puked in a wide splatter cone on the training room floor, emptying over an impressive area in 3 seconds. Help me peel? He asked. I did. Freeze foam, one of the crowd control tools we were working on, presented no problems for someone with my strength, but it was incredibly sticky. Atlas also had us learning to use the kind of taser gauntlets Rush routinely wore. I practiced using spider wire and glue tape. More than anything, we didn't want ourselves associated with police tactics like tear gas or billy clubs, so Atlas had us looking for every non-violent and painless means of mass restraint we could lay our hands on. We were even considering adding a sonic-powered superhero to the team roster. Some of them could cause fear, bliss, sleep, even blindness with a sound wave. I thought Mr. Sandman looked promising, at least as a reservist. When I'm running, I shake the stuff up, Rush complained. You just float about. He had a point. So don't use it. With your turn of speed, tasers, and glue tape, you can drop a half-dozen guys a second, do spider wire pretty well. Yeah, Big A wants us checked out on everything, he almost whined. Let me try something. Willis told me how to find what I was looking for, and I came back with a couple of freeze foam cans wrapped in duct tape. Try these. I showed him how to peel the tape back. He ran around the room for a few seconds. Watching him rush never failed to make me queasy, then grabbed one off his belt and popped the tape, which pulled on the button had been restraining, and blew the can on schedule. Hey, thanks. Dad says anything can be fixed with duct tape. My mind was elsewhere, though. Way back in September, the tea-time anarchist had told me he couldn't time travel when holding anything larger than a bread box, or something like that, so what if I stuck him to the ground, or glue taped him to something? If DA had the same limitations, then maybe I could capture him when he showed up. If he did, after so long, I'd begun to wonder if TA knew DA as well as he said he did. My earbud chirped. Atlas has requested that all sentinels please report to the meeting room. Rush rolled his eyes. What's the boss want now? I actually succumbed to the temptation to make a face behind his back as we left the room. Quinn caught me and laughed. I really did hope the meeting wouldn't take too long. I had to study for my History 101 final. One moment. I need to grab our favorite our favorite plush co-host for some lumbar support here. For those of you who haven't been around all that much, I've been forgetting him of late, but our favorite plush co-host here is this guy, Bean Pal, him Orange. I won him I won him at an arcade many, many moons ago. I think it was around one. It might have been a Bullwinkles, actually. You know what? I think it was Bullwinkles. Now that I say that, but it was up in Portland. Good arcade, regardless. Let me get a stretch in here. Anyway, where were we? Yeah, history final. We arrived after Atlas and Blackstone, but the others were right behind us. Even Artemis, who'd begun cautiously settling in at the dome. She didn't have to sleep the whole day, just stay away from direct sunlight. It was like she had the worst case of porphyria in the world. And since the dome had no windows, her safe world had expanded hugely. And, for a bonus, making appearances upstairs during the day lessened the likelihood of her being labeled a vampire. Not that we would have cared, but the idea of vampire groupies made her want to hurl. Ironically, all of us living in the dome, she got along best with Willis. I'd even seen her make him smile. As she joined me on my side of the meeting room table, I decided we should get Andrew to design a day suit for her. Andrew had sent over some new designs in preparation for the presidential visit. Actually, he'd sent Quinn a new outfit, along with one for me as a cover. He'd made Quinn a black and white reprise of the Christmas costume without the jacket, and of course, it looked fabulous. That's something that, like, I love about superheroes broadly, is them having different takes on their suit for different situations, you know? Like, a really simple example would be the Superman, the animated series spacesuit, where it's like basically it's Superman's suit, but it's also got like it's also enclosed and looks a little bit like a spacesuit, or like seasonal variants that are like clearly warmer than others. You know, I've always found that fun, and I'm glad that this book plays into that. He made mine a sturdier version of my Christmas costume, too. A high-necked and long-sleeved skirted one-piece. The same sapphire blue, but out of some strong spandex weave. Instead of velvet this time. And he added the belt back in, held in at my waist by belt loops. I'd let Quinn talk me into wearing it on the grounds that Andrew's artistic sensibilities would be insulted if I didn't. Let me take that again. I'd let Quinn talk me into wearing it on the grounds that Andrew's artistic sensibilities would be mortally insulted if I didn't. Watching her pose in front of her mirror during our mutual fashion show, the thought had made me laugh. The man had no sensibilities, only strategies. And the way Quinn acted, I was pretty sure he was winning. Regardless, sartorially, we were all ready for the president's arrival on Tuesday. I wore my new costume now, not that our fearless leader noticed. He waited until we all arrived before speaking. Thank you all for coming. As you know, I've been unable to talk Jenny into postponing her visit. I don't like it, Secret Service doesn't like it, but she's the president, and in her words, my people would have kicked your white ass if we had enough ammunition, and I'm not going to be scared away from my city by a boogeyman. Laughter rolled around the table, and he smiled dryly. Pocahontas she's not. President Jennifer Touches Clouds was half Lakota Sioux, as proud of her people as Chicago was of her. A Republican, when she ran for president, she still won Illinois by a landslide. Even Mom voted for her. Atlas banished the smile. We still haven't heard from Jack, and we have no knowledge of his motives, plans, or the extent of his abilities. For all we know, he can turn any crowd into a rioting mob in an instant. Although footage from the concert suggests that setting that many people off might take him a while. They might also have to be primed first. Until we know anything more, we'll have to look at worst case scenarios. Our brave president will be greeted at O'Hare by a crowd of school kids of all grades, teachers, even a marching band. Jack uses them and will have to be prepared to be very gentle. In this scenario, the danger isn't to the president, unless he uses a child riot as cover for another attack. In any case, we'd handle it. Secret Service isn't trained in gentle means of dissuasion, and their responsibility is to secure the president. Are we being a little paranoid? Rush spoke up. Only if they're not out to get us. I raised a hand. Astra? The president's detail has an exit plan in place, don't they? That's a good question, and the answer is yes. They don't advertise it, but all of her detail members are superhumans. One manipulates force fields, another can teleport with one or two passengers. Anywhere she goes, they arrange a jump zone, so while she's with her detail, she personally is reasonably safe. Others around her, not quite so much. But what about her flight? She won't have her detail with her then. You're right, but she'll have us. You, I, and Blackstone will be flying with her. Blackstone? The older man cleared his throat. While I don't like to exert myself levitating that far, I'm quite up to a flight around Chicago, and I will be spinning an illusion that will show us all about 30 feet from our true location, so the casual sniper won't have an opportunity to pick her off in the air. The Secret Service will also be putting a couple of unmarked helicopters in the air, just in case. They are most unhappy since she'll be leaving a detail safety umbrella. I nodded. The Secret Service hated having a principal who flew, although at least if Air Force One went down again, all they'd have to do was push her out the hatch. Atlas looked around the table. Once she leaves O'Hare with us, her entourage will proceed to Lincoln Park High School. Her detail will split to control each landing zone along her route, and we'll repeat the process throughout her stay. He made it sound routine, but his expression made his unhappiness obvious. The visibility will be good for us, Quinn interjected smoothly. We need all the good press we can get after Freak Zone. Excuse me. He nodded. I still think it's asking for trouble when we're flying blind, but if it doesn't blow up on us, it'll be good for us. And it'll be good to see Jenny again, but we thought we had that ride handled. Let's all stay in the saddle this time. He touched his E-pad, lighting the table with a map of the city. Now, if you'll look at the scheduled stops, I want to time it so those of us not on the flying team are arranged as well as we can be. Ajax, I want you to... There was just like a bunch of empty pages there. He kind of trails off in the middle of his spiel. Chapter 28. The American experience with post-event wars in China and the Middle East proved conclusively where strategic power now lay, with superhumans and super soldier-backed military units. A conventional military simply cannot defend against superhuman forces, and the resulting geopolitical shifts have forced the U.S. to redeploy its power abroad to a degree not seen since the end of the Cold War. In forging a new, if shaky, Pax Americana, we have not made many friends. Professor Charles Gibbons, the new heroic age. Air Force One touched down at O'Hare's Tuesday morning, coming out of an orange sky. A brisk wind off Lake Michigan fluttered my cape. As short as it wanted to go all over. Hail to the Chief rang in the air, provided by the talented Lincoln Park High School marching band. Cheers rose from the stiff and shivering crowd as the president and her entourage emerged, and they caught sight of her at the top of the ramp. With the exceptions of Artemis and Chakra, with us in spirit, we all stood at the foot of the stairs, more or less in formation, our breath puffing in the air. We might have been dressed in our best, but a bunch of innocent-looking travel bags filled with the riot control stuff Ajax had come up with waited in a row behind us. Standing at attention with a frown on his face, Atlas still looked yummy, darn it, and I tried to keep my eyes forward. If anything broke during the presidential visit, it would likely happen at one of her later scheduled stops. Dispatch sent us reports of protest groups forming up to play for the cameras all around the city. Flying out, we'd seen the protesters gathering outside the dome, rallying to protest her administration's support for our continued occupation of bases along Israel's new borders and in half the Chinese states and what used to be North Korea. Signs reading, "Stop supporting Israeli imperialism and not our fight," were everywhere, along with superheroes, not super soldiers. Since they'd have already worked themselves up, Blackstone posited a high risk that any of them could be turned into a flash mob by Skyjack. But no pressure. President Touches Clouds reached the foot of the stairs amongst the strobe of camera flashes and waved to the banner holding school kids. She loomed over most of her detail and her staff, and her copper complexion, sharply chiseled features, and waist-length raven black hair made you think of the warrior ancestors she was so proud of. She wore a dark red suit over a black blouse, and her open collar exposed a wide choker, a rainbow of silver-set stones. I couldn't call her pretty, but when she smiled, she certainly dazzled. "John," she said, shaking Atlas's hand while cameras flashed, "it's good to see you." "Madam President," he began, but she leaned in and pulled him into a quick hug while the audience cheered and whistled. Standing beside them, I heard her chuckle. "You were saying?" Now he laughed, smiling broadly enough to show his dimples. "It's good to see you too, Jenny." "Better." She waved at the children again and advanced to the podium set up on the tarmac. The crowd noise immediately died, and she launched into a gracious speech thanking Chicago for the warm welcome. I focused on the crowd, letting my eyes wander over faces. Atlas's instructions had been clear. Look for expressions or body language that didn't fit the moment. Kids, teachers, politicians, handlers, all seemed happy to be there, or bored, or cold. Mostly cold. Out of the corner of my eye, one of the members of the presidential detail caught my attention. The shades made it hard to be sure, but I could swear it was Tom, keeper of the dome's portals, driver, and general security guard. Or Bob. But he'd gotten off the plane with the president. Did we in the Secret Service both get our people from Central Casting? The president wound up her speech quickly, mindful of the cold and the children. She graciously accepted a Christmas bouquet, giving the blushing little grade schooler a kiss in return, and stood back while the White House press secretary read off the visit itinerary. She handed the bouquet off to the secretary while Atlas, Blackstone, and I stepped up beside her, Atlas following some signal from the president, and we took off, rising sedately over the cheering crowd. She waved, we didn't, and I concentrated on looking trim and professional while keeping watch on my forward left zones. Atlas had forward right. At 30 feet up, we angled to the left for a bit while Blackstone worked his magic, then turned west for a long and climbing circuit of the city. The president had a perfect flying form, body leaning at a wind-compensating angle into the direction of the flight, legs straight, feet pointed, hands at her sides. "You're looking well, John." Her voice sounded so close I startled, which in the air translated into a wobble. She laughed kindly. "Fine air control," she explained for my benefit. "I can shape sound waves in the air at close range. I've created a baffle zone, too, so from the ground, even the most long-range eavesdropper isn't getting a thing. And if you're wondering, the reason I'm not shivering is because I've also stuck a thermal layer of air to my clothes. I'm quite toasty." "That's amazing." "I get to dress as I like anyway, no matter the season. How are the boys treating you?" I didn't know how to answer that, and she turned to look at Atlas. "John, haven't you taught this child the 5 standard answer to any question?" "Well, she's hardly a child. She does pretty well on her own," Atlas came to my defense. "I don't think she knows how to respond to teasing from a head of state, Madam President, and the boys are treating her fine." "I'm sorry, Astra," she apologized good-naturedly. "But they are boys, even Blackstone, who acts like everyone's favorite uncle. And you're both looking well," she said to them. "I know why Blackstone is, but you look happier too, John. It's been too long since I've been back." Well, come again soon, but have him teleport you in next time. This is a damn fool stunt. You know it, Jenny. All right, then. What are you doing about the Skyjack nonsense? Blackstone entered the conversation. Investigating, my dear. And with few leads to go on, I had thought. He shrugged. He shrugged, huh? He shrugged. We all half expected to immediately hear demands of give me $50 million or I do it again sort. That is normally what we get after a pointless and destructive show of power. I also wondered if we might be seeing the emergence of a new supervillain mastermind here to take over Chicago's villain community. But with every asset we have listening, things appear to be business as usual. It is a puzzle, I must admit. Would you like some DSA help? I think not. I really don't see where more would be better in this instance. There's really only so much ground to go over in any case. While I prefer not to make optimistic statements, with the help of our newest member, I'm pursuing a promising lead. And that's all he'll tell me about it. You just got back from Asia. How goes the great game, as it were? She laughed. Like it's ever interested you. I think we're winning. Manchuria and Tibet are completely out of it. Beijing and Chongqing have agreed to declare an official ceasefire to go with the one that's been in place the last 2 years. They've both stopped claiming smaller breakaway states. I'm pushing hard for a Chinese confederacy. I think the hardcore nationalists will eventually settle for that as the only way to regain some unity and get us to leave. Tibet and Manchuria will probably want us to stay forever. What's your national security advisor say? That man walks into my office every day with a proceed with caution traffic sign nailed to his forehead. Atlas barked a laugh at this. You're hardly the cautious sort. If you listen to my critics, I make enemies so I can eat their hearts and nail their scalps to the Oval Office wall. It's not necessarily a bad rep to have. No, no, it's not. There won't be another Caliphate War or China War so long as they recognize our strength and my complete willingness to use it. So I hold the peace pipe in one hand and the tomahawk in the other. One of those nice drop-forged military tomahawks, of course. My ancestors conquered the Black Hills while yours were fighting for their independence, and I don't mind if they remember that. I kept my mouth shut and listened as we made a circuit of Chicago, a smaller one of the Loop, then headed for the Dome. Until now, international diplomacy hadn't interested me any more than politics, but listening to them, I realized she manipulated her image as intentionally as the Sentinels did. At the same time, I could see how much she loved it up here, free in the air. Now she was mostly grounded, her gifts tucked away, and her obvious enjoyment of the flight and the boys' company made me wonder why she'd ever left the team. We landed outside the Dome, where Chicago's finest stood ready to push back the crowd pushing up to the barriers. They weren't in riot gear, but two squads waited inside, ready to mobilize at the drop of a hat. Any hat. News crews filmed the waving signs and chanting groups as Touch as Clouds waved with aplomb to the supporters and protesters alike. Once inside, the group broke up so that Atlas could take the president around to show off the base's latest renovations before she met everyone for a buffet lunch in the assembly room, for which Willis performed Herculean feats. Then we headed back out to take her to Lincoln Park High School for her biggest speech. The largest audience for her trip would be there, but the Secret Service was all over it. I took a close look at Bob while passing through the lobby and decided we needed to talk, or maybe I needed to talk to Blackstone. About a lot of things, that was for certain. Yeah, we got time for one more chapter, I'd say. That is before intermission. Chapter 29. I can deal with the things I know, and the things I know I don't know. It's the things that I don't know that always bite me in the butt. Astra, Notes from a Life. When Air Force One disappeared into the evening sky, we all breathed a sigh of relief and stood down. Our days returned to normal, and I had another revelation to distract me. Bob was a superhuman, and he was Tom. Tom and Bob were the same person, sort of. It was all very confusing. I'd read about Redux-type superhumans, any superhuman who duplicates themselves, but there were lots of variations. Bob and Tom were periodic permanent duplicators, a retired super soldier, codenamed Platoon. Blackstone got disturbingly vague on how they duplicated. Did they blood, grow a Siamese twin, or what? And how often, but he did tell me they shared a group mind. All of them know what one of them learns. The helmeted guards that take shifts at the dome's main doors, Tony, Bart, Ralph, also them. Him. Whatever. So was Willis. I'd never have noticed. Older, thinner, talking with a dead-on Oxford accent like he did. And when I asked him what that was all about, he told me he enjoyed playing Alfred. Apparently, both the Secret Service and the DSA employed lots of him as field agents. If one died, the others instantly knew how, where, and who did it, if their dead brother did. Blackstone couldn't tell me why Touch's clouds left the Sentinels, though. Apparently, it came as a complete surprise to him, too. Her 180-degree change of direction from superhero into politician had been a shock to the team. I probably only wondered about it to keep me from dwelling on Atlas. I'd more or less made up with my parents, and I could ponder the imponderable dark anarchist as a distraction for only so long. Despite appearances, I was a healthy adult female, and since the ball, my always vivid dreams had headed in a grown-up direction. I could deal with my passionate nighttime fantasies. They were short on details. I didn't have the experience to fill them in, and even when they rocked me from my sleep, my heart racing, well, they beat darker dreams. But when they popped back up as daydreams, they became horribly embarrassing. One morning, Chakra took a look at the color of my chakras and gave me a copy of her latest edition of Sacred Gates. Not a book for the under 18, mind you, and she'd thoughtfully included bookmarks and scribbled notations. I'd die before admitting I read it, but uh, I'd die before admitting I read it, but at least it showed me one way to deal with the dreams. I also got better at acting cool, calm, and collected around Atlas, when all I wanted to do was melt into a puddle. Meanwhile, my tried and true strategy for curing love sickness, find a flaw in the object of my infatuation and then dwell on it, wasn't quite working. Beyond the usual man flaws, I couldn't find anything big enough to be a turnoff, and even thought his man flaws were adorable. Yuck, right? I was in my rooms trying to distract myself with licensing studies when I got another chance to practice my new Be Cool skill. My earbud chirped and dispatch summoned us all to the assembly room. We arrived to find Atlas and Blackstone waiting for us. They made an interesting contrast. Atlas all caped and leather-suited, sharp-jawed ruggedness. You could practically see the cowboy hat. Blackstone dapper as always in his tucks and tails. I got there first, followed by Artemis. Andrew had jumped at the challenge, and she was testing his new day suit design, a leather catsuit with lots of buckles and straps, and a mask that completely covered her head under the hood. Somehow, Andrew had kept it from looking like serious fetish wear, but I always found not being able to see her eyes disconcerting. I turned away to catch Atlas giving me an odd look. The rest followed us in, Rush last of all. Thanks for coming, everyone, Atlas said once Rush joined us. I'm going to turn it over to Blackstone. Thank you, my boy. I know that everyone here has been wondering about my investigations. I can now tell you I believe we know who Jack is, what happened, and, most importantly, why. That got our attention. He touched the pad he'd set in front of him, and the table lit up with a face. This is Bradley Clark. He's a freelance contract negotiator. He's not on anyone's radar, but he's been very successful. He's got a reputation for always closing the deal. He looked at us all a little sheepishly. When Jack refused to emerge with demands or further attacks, I had to reassess my initial assumptions. After some thought, I no longer believed that we faced a new master supervillain trying to muscle in on Chicago territory. But in the absence of further activity, who benefited from the Freak Zone riot? After the Brotherhood and the Sanguinary Boys' attorneys successfully argued mind control to secure their release, I began investigating their contacts and movements from the time of the client's arrests. I also began looking for anomalies in the police reports of the event. With Artemis's help, he gave her a nod, we've managed to discover a trail. On the 17th, Mr. Clark, who lives in New York, flew into O'Hare and picked up a rental car at the airport. Mr. Clark stayed at the Palmer House, and during his stay, he conducted no business that we are aware of, but his car was one of the vehicles destroyed by the rioters in the Millennium Park garage. This is, in fact, how we first picked up his end of the trail. No concert ticket had been purchased in his name, nor the name of his company, so why was his rental there? He reported it stolen. It's hardly the type of car that's usually boosted. Here we caught two breaks. Hotel security cameras identify him as the driver when the car left the hotel parking lot, and the rental company's GPS record shows he drove it directly from Palmer House to the concert. He paused to see if we have any questions, and nobody did. Reading its GPS memory further back showed two trips to the south side of Chicago, to places with no tourist value or business value to someone in his line of work. Here Artemis took the lead, quietly showing his picture around the area. She found several witnesses to a meeting between our friend Mr. Clark, a pair of Brotherhood attorneys, and an unidentified third man. Here we had another stroke of good fortune. The meeting took place in Danny's pub, a location Artemis had previously wired for observation. She checked her cameras and mics and found the meeting. Unfortunately, it took place out of pickup range, but she got several good pictures of all of them. Blackstone brought them up on the table. I stopped breathing. One of the four was the tea-time anarchist. It is my belief that Mr. Clark is at least some sort of projective empath. The firm hired him to stage the Freak Zone riot, specifically so that the malicious mind control could be used as a defense for their clients. We then went back to the theater and reviewed all its security tapes to see if we could find him in the crowd either before or during the riot. I don't think you'd find him during the riot, I spoke up without thinking, my mind scattered. Oh? Blackstone turned toward me. Unless he had to stay with them. I mean, he could have more safely waited until the mom stormed out, taking us away from the theater, then walked out a service door. Blackstone smiled, and I flushed, realizing that I was the little girl who got a gold star for spelling B correctly. That is a very good thought. We reviewed all the recordings, not just the ones from the public areas. He left by a side door. The camera there was conveniently broken and on a repair list, but we caught him on a security camera from the back of the Millennium Park bicycle station. So what can we prove, and what does it mean? Ajax asked. Blackstone smiled more widely. Everything, my boy. I've spoken with Legal Eagle, and he has set the gears in motion. Our evidence and conclusions are being organized by the investigating officers for submission to a warrant judge. The important points are these. Mr. Clark can be charged for fraud regarding the vehicle, and the charges will rest on his recorded presence at the theater, the evidence for which will also show he was the only occupant of the theater not influenced by Syjack, which makes him the chief suspect. It'll allow detectives to follow the same trail of breadcrumbs that we did, secure testimonies to the meeting with the attorneys, and so forth. Proving Mr. Clark as Syjack is the key, of course, but Chakra engaged with psychic battle with him knows he's psychic scent. His abilities can be verified by DSA psychics, at which point questioning by someone like Veritas is warranted. While psychic evidence does not hold a great deal of weight at trial, it's more than enough for the issuance of further warrants for his financial records, residence, so forth, so on. Once it's proven that Mr. Clark is Syjack, the mind control argument falls apart. At the very least, Mr. Clark was quite provably in New York when the Brotherhood and Sanguinary Boys had their little rumble. If we're lucky, we'll be able to pin the entire Syjack plot on them through their attorneys. The only loose end we have is that fourth man, whom I can only assume to be an expediter of some kind. Doubtless, the gang lawyers will give him up as part of their plea. And that, Atlas concluded, grinning evilly, brings it back to us. Legal Eagle's helping the district attorney prepare the warrant applications. Police are nailing down every lead and piece of evidence they can bring without actively questioning anybody to give to the warrant judge. Because both gangs are flight risks and considered very dangerous, DA's going to request warrants for the whole lot to be served simultaneously with warrants for the attorneys and Mr. Clark. We saddle up to serve the general warrants. A murmur of grim approval went around the table, but I just stared at the image of the fourth man, the anarchist. Instead of sharing the excitement, I tried to breathe normally. Boom, boom, boom. The question now immediately becomes, is that the real tea time anarchist, or is this the dark anarchist that's been looming like a cloud over this whole story? It truly is unclear. We don't know. We'll find out as we go here, but before we go finding out, uh, before we go finding out by diving into part 6 and chapter 30, I think we're going to take a little break. Now would be a fantastic time to have a little break yourself. Stretch, get hydrated, take your necessary meds, pet your pets, take care of things broadly. We'll be back as soon as possible. I'm setting a timer on my phone for 15 minutes, but we might sit and listen to Dimension X a bit farther. Keep one eye on the stream. While you are up and about, petting your pets and all that, I would heartily suggest joining the Discord, where you can post pictures of said pets. Because everybody loves a good cat picture, you know? That's what the internet's for. So, we will indeed be right back. We are not starting soon anymore. Enjoy the Dimension X. I'm going to get up and get some water, walk around a little bit, and we'll see you in at least 15 minutes.
Strange thing to say.
Is it? Is it really so strange? Is it strange that I'm here at this very moment, and that you're here too?
Perhaps not. No, perhaps not.
Let me look at you. Oh, you're really beautiful, you know.
Am I?
You know you are. Oh, you're lovely.
Do you really like me?
Like you. If I could only tell you.
Oh, I'm so glad. You see, I'm your free introductory romance, given you as a sample by Greater Romance Industries.
What?
With home offices in Newark, New Jersey. You see, only our firm offers romances which are truly spontaneous and fated.
Spontaneous and faded?
Due to our technological researches, we are able to dispense with such clumsy apparatus as transistor radios and... Sir, where are you going?
I was sick and disgusted. After that, there were several other attempts to get in touch with me, but I ignored them. I wanted no more to do with the romance game. In a couple of days, I called up a twittering aunt of mine, and she arranged a blind date for me with the daughter of one of her oldest friends. The blind date was a nice, friendly girl with plain, mousy brown hair. We were introduced in my aunt's living room, and we sat out on her sun porch and talked.
So you're Tom Hanley.
Yeah, I guess I am.
Your aunt has told me a lot about you. You work in advertising, don't you?
Yes, that's right. Madison Avenue.
Oh, I think that's thrilling. Advertising, I mean. It's such an interesting field.
Well, we like to think so.
Yes, I imagine you do all right.
Seems like, it's warmer this evening, doesn't it?
Yes, it is. Although I don't mind the cooler weather so much. Lots of people complain about it, but I don't mind.
Well, I don't either, I guess. As long as you're dressed for it.
Yes, I suppose that's the secret.
Oh, I was just thinking, do you like bowling?
Oh, I don't know. I've never bowled.
Oh.
Do you like tennis? I'm crazy about tennis.
Well, tennis is all right. Yeah. I guess you could say tennis is fine.
I'm crazy about it.
Well, all right. So it wasn't romantic. At least it wasn't at first. But there must have been something about it. We began to hit it off, and we had more dates, and one thing led to another, and the first thing you know, darned if we didn't get married. Yes, that's the story of my courtship. Of course, it isn't the whole story. At least, if you're making a case history, you have to know the important things. And to my mind, one of the most important of all happened after we were married. We bought a nice little house out near my aunt's and settled down in it. Then, one Saturday morning, I was out cutting the lawn. Hi there. Huh? Did you say something?
I said hi. Don't you remember me? Joe Morris.
Oh, sure. New York romances. Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Morris, but you better take me off the list. I'm married now.
Certainly. I know all about it. Congratulations.
Oh, thanks.
I mean, I know all about the way it happened. Introduced by your aunt, talking on the sun porch. corny, old-fashioned stuff. And now, don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking it. Quite the contrary. Do you know what we down at New York Romancers call this?
No, what?
Hanley's Mode. We studied you. A lot of commercial possibilities there. We've got it down on graphs. Effects of embarrassment on the psyche. The role of the ant in American courtship. The whole works.
What are you talking about?
New York Romancers, what else? We've got a new service. It's called the Old-Fashioned Plan.
The what?
We provide bonded ants for young men to call up. We even have the ant walk into the sun parlor at unexpected intervals with a plate of cookies or something. They say the suspense becomes almost overpowering. Like our motto always said, spontaneity and a sense of fatedness. It never misses, my boy. Never misses.
Fred Collins again, and I'll have another word about X-1 in a moment. Have you caught one? A bad cold, nose all stuffed up, feeling achy, miserable? Then hear this. More people have taken more bromoquinine for more complete relief than with any other tablet ever sold for colds. You could use aspirin, cough syrups, or nose drops all day long and not get bromoquinine's relief. Because bromoquinine does more. Works to relieve stopped-up nose, body aches, fever, irregularity, that blue feeling a cold brings, and the headache, too. Yes, more relief, even for virus colds. And the reason? Bromoquinine is the only cold tablet sold with wonder-working quinine combined with 5 other medicines and health-fortified with vitamin C. That's why bromoquinine cold tablets give you more complete relief. Remember,
every second someone takes it for the miseries of a cold. Millions more take bromoquinine.
get the tablets that have relieved more cold discomforts than any other. Get bromoquinine brand cold tablets. You have just heard X-1 presented by the National Broadcasting Company in cooperation with Galaxy Science Fiction Magazine, which this month features The Repairman by Harry Harrison. Being an interstellar troubleshooter wouldn't be so bad if only you could shoot the trouble. Galaxy Magazine on your newsstand today. X-1 has brought you Gray Flannel Armor, a story from the pages of Galaxy written by Finn O'Donovan and adapted for radio by William Welch. Featured in our cast were William Redfield as Thomas Hanley and Guy Repp as Joe Morris. Others in our cast were Abby Lewis, Pat Hosley, Hetty Galen, Freddie Chandler, and Helen Gerald. This is Fred Collins speaking. This broadcast concludes this series of X-1. We sincerely hope you enjoyed it. X-1 was directed by George Voutsas and is an NBC Radio Network production.
Guest star Don Amici is your host on Nightline, your line to new worlds of entertainment after dark. Tonight on most of these NBC stations.
Countdown for blast off. X-5, 4, 3, 2, X-1, fire. From the far horizons of the unknown come tales of new dimensions in time and space. These are stories of the future, adventures in which you'll live in a million, could be years, on 1,000 maybe worlds. The National Broadcasting Company, in cooperation with Galaxy Science Fiction Magazine, presents
X minus one.
Tonight, we take you some 800 years into the future to meet man's best friend.
Well, what's the matter? Who's there? What? Oh, turn on the annunciator. All right, I'm coming. I'm coming. Well, stand in front of the screen. I can't see you.
I am in front of the screen, Mr. Schnee. You haven't turned up the viewing control.
Oh, yeah. Well, there you are. Do I know you?
May I be the first to congratulate you, Mr. Schnee?
You may indeed. What for?
Oh, you haven't heard the news. Good, then I shall be the first. I imagine I got a head start on the others because of my superior facilities for locating you. Your address wasn't given. These pronouncements do tend to be a bit vague. It's a matter of tradition, I suppose.
I haven't heard any news for days. I've been listening to my sound tapes and, and meditating. Now, wait a minute. I'll let you in. Oh, the auto bursar must have forgotten to pay the doorbell. Have to open it manually. Just a minute. All right, you can come in now.
Well, I suppose you don't know who I am.
Well, you're wearing the uniform of an upper echelon salesman. I just wanted to warn you, nobody can force me to buy anything. I'm a free citizen.
Oh, now, come, Mr. Schnee.
I suppose the big news is I'm the lucky householder to whom the little gem room expander will first be offered.
Oh, nothing of the sort. I'm not a common salesman.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't notice your merchant prince badge. Come in, have a chair. No, not that one. It's my meditator. It's still running.
Oh, thank you.
Well?
Mr. Schnee, our prognosticator has just given its fortnightly prognostication. You are going to be our new ruler. Congratulations. I'm sure you'll be a splendid one, too.
But wait, what's to become of the old ruler?
You're scheduled to dispose of him sometime this month. Now, Mr. Schnee, allow me to introduce myself. I am Diedrich Floria, Vice President of the Munitions and Container Corporation. Here I have our latest model in this case right here. There we are. Beautiful, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you will only agree to shoot Overlord Kip with a Floria Semper Fidelis gun, my corporation will be happy to place a substantial amount of credit at your disposal in any bank you choose. $6 billion, to be exact. Now, if you'll just sign here on the dotted line...
Nonsense.
Oh, come now, Mr. Schnee. Even a ruler can use money. Bribery for government officials, bread and circuses for the people. Oh, money's a very useful commodity, Mr. Schnee. Shall we say, $7 billion?
I don't doubt that money is useful, but when I said nonsense, I meant the prognosticator.
Mr. Schnee?
The whole thing is a lot of, well, nonsense. A whole planet of supposedly intelligent people listening to what's really more an oracle. A machine can't read the future. It's impossible.
Oh, dear, Mr. Schnee, that's sacrilege. You can't talk, confound it, sir. You can't talk that way about the machine. Listen, after all, let's look at this reasonably. Machines can and do answer all the problems of our daily life. So why shouldn't a superior machine be able to tell the future?
If you ask me, behind the wires and gimmicks and whatnots of the machine, there's a secret room in which a half-mad, half-intoxicated old priestess sits delivering her Delphic pronouncements. Might as well have an above-board oracle and be done with it.
Now, Mr. Schnee, even our ruler shouldn't flout the authority of machinery. Of course, it's all right when you're alone with friends like me, but in public you shouldn't.
Mr. Schnee, I'm from the Daily Disseminator. How does it feel to be ruler prognosticate? Perhaps you tell us in your own words.
Oh, that's what I get for leaving the annunciator on.
There's your community.
All right. I'll answer it. Hello.
Mr. Schnee?
Yeah.
I'm Overlord Kip. I understand you are the young man who was destined to dispose of me and take my place.
Well, honestly, Your Honorship, I haven't the slightest
You'll
intention...
make it swift and painless, won't you? Suppose you come around to the palace around 1 o'clock or so. We can have a bite of lunch and discuss the matter together. After all, I think you'll agree that I have been a reasonably good ruler, so I have the right to die with dignity.
Oh, absolutely. No question of that. I think it's a very good idea having a chat about it first. It is awkward to dispose of someone you haven't met previously.
Thank you, Mr. Schnee. I hope you'll find your successor as cooperative as yourself.
I wonder whether he wants me to make an appointment so he'll have a band of counter-assassins ready to kill me. You know, that would save him the expense of a standby guard. He's pretty tight, you know.
He wouldn't dream of doing anything of the sort. Overlord Kip knows what's due his position. He has a sense of duty and responsibility, which, unfortunately, seems to be lacking in his successor, if you'll excuse me speaking frankly. I am, of course, considerably older than you, and so I feel...
It's quite all right. You may speak freely.
Furthermore, if he had you killed, the people would probably give him a painful and lingering death. for attempting to interfere with the course of destiny. Oh, by the way, speaking of the people, the Polo will probably be around to hail their new leader soon. You really should work up a few well-chosen words.
Well, I'm not going to do it. They can't make me kill him and take over, and that is flat. I am not the administrative type. I never have been.
Well, in that case, the people will probably kill you for attempting to interfere with fate. Have a cigar?
But I wouldn't have done anything.
There are sins of omission as well as commission. Come now, it's true. A ruler's life expectancy isn't very long. At least it hasn't been the last few reigns, but it's longer than yours will be if you refuse to fulfill your destiny.
I wouldn't make a fit ruler. Consider my origins. I wouldn't tell this to anyone but you. I'm illegitimate. I don't even know who my father is.
It's a wise child who knows his own father. And some of the most celebrated leaders in history have been illegitimate. Look at William the Conqueror, Alexander Hamilton.
I don't think that's too much of a recommendation.
You see, almost anyone can be a leader. The important thing is that he be destined for leadership.
But I'm no good at it. Everybody says so. I've never done a thing in my life. My aged mother has had to work to support me.
Well, it's time enough that you stood on your own 2 feet, my boy. Remember, destiny must take its course. Oh, excuse me, I'm due on radio monitor in a few seconds. If you don't mind, I'll broadcast from here. I'll just check my equipment here. Fine. Now, here we go. My friends, allow me to introduce to you your new ruler, Gervais Schnee. He is planning to assassinate Overlord Kip with a Floria Semper Fidelis gun. Floria Semper Fidelis guns retail from credit 2.98 for the peasant's pistol, all up to credit 1089.98 for the super deluxe conspirator's model. But each is the best attainable for the price. Mr. Schnee will, of course, use the super deluxe model. And now I give you Mr. Schnee.
Right into here?
Oh, anywhere. It's non-directional.
Oh. Thank you for your confidence and support. I only hope I prove worthy of it. That's all.
Thank you, ruler prognosticate, Gervais Schnee.
Will you have some more wine, Mr. Schnee?
Oh, no, thank you, Overlord Kip. I've had too much already.
It's a delightful vintage, isn't it? I think it was bought by Overlord Jasper about 7 reigns ago. You'll find the cellars in perfect order. I'll give you the inventory and the key a little later.
Do we have to talk about it?
Oh, well, one has to take these things as they come, you know. Here today, gone tomorrow. That reminds me. Will tomorrow suit you?
Well, of course, it really doesn't make any difference to me.
All right, then. We'll set it for tomorrow, if that's convenient for both of us. I have the afternoon clear. We'll make a public announcement a little later.
Well, all right, if you say so.
Of course. And now we can go into my study and discuss the details at our leisure. I've got half a box of some wonderful cigars left over. I think you'll enjoy them.
Oh, Mr. Schnee. Mr. Schnee, you aren't ready yet.
Well, I can't button the top button of this uniform.
Oh, isn't it handsome? Black and silver, the traditional assassin's uniform.
It was made for me without charge by Hanson and Cruster, the tailors.
Yes, of course. It's the curse these days, you know, the over-commercialization of important public functions. Oh, wait a minute, I have your pistol ready here. I bet you're excited. Couldn't sleep last night, eh?
No, well, yes, I did toss a bit.
Well, I see you're getting telegrams. Isn't that nice? Had your breakfast?
Oh, well, I don't think I'm exactly in the mood for eating.
Oh, you should, you know. A good breakfast makes good aim.
Well, I really couldn't eat a thing.
Well, you'll have a fine lunch after it's all over. I saw your black and silver limousine at the door.
What? I don't have a black and silver limousine.
You do now. Oh, yes. You know, there's going to be a brass band along. There'll be crowds cheering. Oh, it's such a lovely morning. You've hired 2 removers, I trust.
Removers. Yes, I think so.
Good. Oh, what pageantry. The black and silver limousine, yourself in your lovely uniform, the black cloak and hood of the body removers sitting beside the chauffeurs, silent, The band playing the funeral march as you move down the boulevard. Crowds cheering, little children let out of school presenting you with flowers and television cameras. Oh, what a sight, what a sight. Well, now it's about 10:30. Shall we be off? Well, come on. Get out of the car, Mr. Schnee.
I don't feel so good.
Well, come on now. The television cameras are ready. There we are. Just a moment. Now, ruler prognosticate Schnee, allow me to load your super deluxe conspirators Floria Semper Fidelis gun for you.
It's already loaded.
I'm supposed to do it now for the cameras.
It's already loaded.
Permit me to check it, then?
It's perfectly all right, I tell you. No, don't touch it. Nobody would have any difficulty loading a Semper Fidelis gun.
Yes, that's right. Yes, of course. Whether you buy the peasants or the conspirators model, both have the same freeloading mechanism.
Here we are, candy, popcorn, hashish, yogurt. Buy your refreshments here. Program. Sometimes you can't tell the assassins from the cops without a program. Get your program for the program.
All right, Schnee, it's time. Let's go.
Well, here we are again, eh?
Overlord Kip, I am officially here.
Well, now, just a minute, old man. I have my speech, you know.
Your speech? Oh, I'm sorry, really.
Well, that's all right. Ladies and gentlemen, before the conclusion of this ceremony, I wish to remind you of a few important facts concerning my reign, which comes to an end in just a few minutes. I call your attention to the budget of 2786. 83 billion credits against an outgo of 72 billion. Not to mention the dam across the Volga River, which was constructed 3 months short of the proposed 5-year date at a cost of 73 billion. I thank you. Well, that's it, old man, huh?
Are you all done?
Why, yes, I think I've covered everything. Well, goodbye and good luck, Overlord Schnee. Anytime you're ready.
You mean now?
Well, come along, old man. The networks have only cleared an hour. There's a commercial program starting in 3 minutes. Get on with it.
Well, all right. Here goes. All right. Everyone will now please leave while the removers take over.
But the television, the cameras, it's part of the ceremony. Why can't they televise the removal?
Everybody leave immediately!
They're all gone now, Overlord Schnee. Perhaps...
You too.
But after all...
Out. I want to meditate.
Well, very well. All right.
Alone at last. Kip. Overlord Kip.
Phew. I don't think I'd have been able to stay still much longer.
You all right?
Schnee, you're a good shot. That blank really stung on a very tender spot, I might add.
No time for chatting. We've got to get this over in a hurry. Now comes the part where your friends will have to look like real removers. I hope they can give it the professional touch.
Don't worry about us. We are real removers. At least both of us have participated in removals. I'll take off my hood.
But wait. Why, you're Overlord Morehouse. I've seen you in pictures. And the other one. You're Shinnick. You died before I was born. That is, you were supposed to have died. Both of you were. Morehouse was supposed to have killed you.
Well, we're not precisely dead, only retired, you might say. The prognosticator didn't say he had to be killed, just disposed of, as Kip undoubtedly pointed out to you in your little interview together.
Sorry I couldn't tell you the truth, old man, but you might have changed your mind and given us away.
We've formed a little club of dead overlords.
We're looking forward to the day when you join us, Overlord Schnee.
Well, you better hurry. If the four of us are discovered, the mob will tear us to pieces.
Oh, you're right. Get on the stretcher, Kip. Bad enough we're going to have to carry you out. At least don't expect us to lift you up.
Victoria?
Yes, Your Honorship?
The prognosticator is right here in the palace, isn't it?
Yes, Your Honorship.
Lead me to it immediately.
Certainly, Your Honorship. It's this way. Here you are, Your Honorship. This is the prognosticator. 20 stories high, 100 meters wide, the center of our entire civilization.
Leave me. I would be alone with the prognosticator.
But Your Honorship...
Leave me, and take all the technicians with you.
Yes. Yes, Your Honorship. You're all alone now, Your Honorship?
You too. Leave me.
Well, yes. Yes. Yes, Your Honorship. Your wishes are my command.
Well.
Can't you read, you dumb cluck? That door says private.
Open up. It's me, Gervais. Open up.
Oh, all right. Don't rush me. Oh, it's you, is it?
Let me in.
Well, hurry up. Don't want any of these nosy scientists around. Well, what do you want?
Still the same old place, huh? Teapot. Your crystal ball has dust on it. And why don't you get yourself a new pack of gypsy cards? And please get rid of that old overstuffed horror.
That old overstuffed horror is a rare old psychoanalyst couch. You see that hole? That's the original stuffing.
What is that smell? That's not tea you're drinking, it's gin.
Why, of course it is. Nice to see you, Sonny. It's about time you came to pay your old mother a visit. I kind of thought something like this would stir you up.
Mother, you know you shouldn't have done it.
What'd I do?
You fixed the prognostications, that's what you did. Although why you had to pick on me,
Oh, I got tired of supporting you. You're a big boy, and it's about time you earned your own living. Besides, I thought it'd be a good idea to elect a sympathetic administration. Sympathetic to me, that is. Palace needs a new ventilating system. The air in here is terrible.
Well, why didn't you use the prognosticator to get new ventilation put in?
Oh, they'd have gotten around it the same way you got around killing Kip. But you pay attention to the prognosticator, boy. Don't you try to weasel out of what it says by looking for double meanings. It's time you overlords learned that when the prognosticator says something, it means it.
Yes, Mother.
I'd hate to have to give orders to have my own boy disposed of. The last 3 disposals weren't so bad. But sometimes those disposals can turn out real messy.
Yes, Mother.
Oh, maybe blood is thicker than water, but not much.
Yes, Mother.
And why shouldn't you listen to my prognostications, huh? Just because they're dolled up a little doesn't mean they're not true. Don't I have a crystal ball? Don't I have a gypsy card pack? Don't I have tea leaves? Best tea leaves money can buy.
Yes, Mother.
So? What are you going to do?
I'm going to have the ventilating system attended to right away.
Now, that's my boy. Now, look at these here tea leaves in the bottom of my cup of gin.
Yes, Mother.
I can see that everything's going to work out fine. Just fine.
You have just heard X-1, presented by the National Broadcasting Company in cooperation with Galaxy Science Fiction Magazine, which this month features The Hardest Bargain by Evelyn Smith.
Yeah, we waited around for the end of that one. Gariki is right. That was a fantastic ending. They do mean tarot cards, by the way, when they're talking about those cards. I know that's probably relatively easy to get from context. You know, they're talking about the tea leaves and the psychologist's couch, etc., etc. You know, it's all very, very stereotypical of a fortune teller. Fortune teller, I am going into battle, and I need your strongest fortunes. Uh, excuse, excuse the reference. Uh, Simply had to. But yeah, that was a really good one. Good enough that I was like, oh, we need to hear the end of this. That was fantastic. Honestly, as I've said previously, I've been using these Dimension X and X minus one and old time radio at large as a supplement to the podcasts I've been listening to. They're really good. They're fantastic. They're a great time. Anyway, now that we've gotten that all square, we should be good to take a little drink of water and resume our book. So let's dive right in to chapter 30, the start of part 6 of our book here. Before we do, though, for context, for those who are just tuning in, we have found ourselves post a visit from the president in quite the situation. The evil version of the time-traveling villain, the tea time anarchist, seems to be working with the crime families of Chicago to an unclear and unknown end, but seems to have used the strengths of a villain known as Jack to cause mass hysteria, directed rioting, and they're finally pinning down exactly who this guy is, and he's going to have his day. So, chapter 30. If you want to avoid hurting somebody, convince them that fighting you's a bad idea. This is hard to do in the heat of the moment, especially if you look like a perky high school cheerleader, so it's best to make the threat credible beforehand, through your reputation. Failing that, go for shock and awe. If it works, great. If it doesn't, well, you're halfway done anyway. Astra, notes from a life. How stupid was I? Really? I tried to imagine myself explaining. The tea time anarchist dropped by a couple of times. He said he didn't do it, and I believed him. But it didn't make sense. The Sijack thing had DA written all over it. If I'd been that gullible, if DA was completely made up, why had TA recruited me at all? To catch himself? Was he crazy? Not just anything for the cause crazy, but completely loony? But crazy, not crazy, it hadn't been all lies. I was stone cold positive he was a time traveler. And could I be certain the guy Artemis caught on video was him? Il Doppio wasn't the only shapeshifter around. A freak show could have done it. Why escaped me, but I couldn't see whys in any of it. I finally decided that this was what Shelley used to call an NMI, need more information moment. If I found out I'd been wrong, well, I'd faced the music before, though imagining what Atlas would say made me want to cry. One way or another, it was time for me to set a trap of my own. I made a call, then went online and placed the Lonely Hearts ad. Chicago saw its first big snowstorm just before Christmas, and I came home. To cover for my continued training and patrolling schedule, Mom and Dad bought a small condo in Boyd Tower, the residential tower sitting atop the parking garage entrance to the dome, and moved me right in. Officially, they'd bought it as a gift to make up for my missing fall semester, and it made sense in a wildly extravagant sort of way. I'd be physically attending U of C next semester, and it was a lot closer to the campus. I thought it was the latest move in our ongoing fight over my impending career decisions. The training period ended in February, after all. I just didn't know what kind of move it was. The bees, though, they love the place. Anticipating a media push once the re-arrests hit the news, Quinn set up a bunch of marketing and media meetings for me and Artemis. We approved our plushies and talked to the writers for Sentinels, both the show and the comic. The studio wanted to write us in as quickly as possible. Sentinels is mostly an action-oriented police procedural kind of series, light on the drama, but I found it horribly embarrassing. Who wants to sit down and talk about how other people should see you? I couldn't think of anything more narcissistic, other than perhaps having my own plushie. But Quinn insisted, saying Atlas wanted to make sure the way they wrote me didn't make me want to crawl into a hole. And I discovered what Santa had brought me this year. Artemis was becoming a real friend, even kind of a big sister, one who could share both sides of my life. She opted for a second true secret identity, which meant Jackie and I were able to team up with the bees for the all-important mission of last-minute Christmas shopping. And, as an early present, the general warrants finally came through. We got the green light to serve them 2 days before Christmas. After some thought, Atlas decided to share the glory on this one. He brought in all the Chicago CAIs and handed off 3 or 4 targets to each. The Brotherhood and Sanguinary Boys pretty much claimed all of Chicago, so it seemed only fair. Blackstone doled out the targets based on their power sets and the powers fielded by the CAI teams. We kept most of the A-class villains for ourselves, but there were plenty of B and C-class targets to go around. Thanks to Blackstone, Artemis, and the CPD Vice Squad, we had their movements dialed to precision and went out to serve all the warrants at once. We meticulously planned the operation. Observers verified locations beforehand. Contracts in the phone companies stood ready to shut down every known cell number when the action started, and the special paddy wagons stood by where necessary. They gave me Brick. They weren't going to, but I told Atlas I wanted it. Looks quiet down here. Or, this is Artemis, rather. Looks quiet down there. Yes, it does. I'd gotten so used to Artemis misting in without a whisper, I didn't even turn around. My infrared vision showed us our 4 targets, in the middle of a floating poker game in a back room at Dennehy's pub. That was okay. The officers waiting on hand had warrants for that, too. I was really only there for Brick. The other 3 were B and C class sanguinary boys, a vacuum, an aerokinetic who could suck the air right out of your lungs, Lighter, a standard pyrokinetic who preferred vodka as a starter, and the surgeon, a slicer with extendable razor-sharp nails and a taste for pain. We'd read their files. Nothing proven, nothing pretty either. Minions sat drinking or played darts outside in the bar, but the police stood ready to swoop in and collect any that made it out the front. My palms were slick, and I focused on my breathing as my anticipation spiked my bloodstream with adrenaline. We only waited for the word. All heroes, this is Atlas. Gully washers, go. Repeat, we're go. Artemis drew her E-lasers. Hope? You're an annoying Pollyanna, and I'm glad you came and found me. Sure, get mushy now. And we got. We had no knock warrants, so we didn't knock. I already mapped the wood frame wall by its heat patterns, and I went straight in, my own battering ram, spraying bits of wood and plaster around the room. I knocked Brick out of his chair and into the sturdier brick wall behind him before the pieces stopped bouncing. I grabbed his throat as he fell toward me. Behind me, snap, 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 marked Artemis's attack as she danced in and out of the mist. A cigarette lighter bounced off the wall beside me, and a miniature tornado filled the room with money and chips before it died. You're all under arrest. Resistance will be met with further force. I put as much authority as I could into my soprano. Brick bellowed, brought his arms up to break my grip. I let him, stepping back and turning aside to sweep his legs. Brick collapsed with a grunt, and I landed on him. Rolling him on top of me and pushing with my legs, I launched him into the ceiling. Plaster rained down as he comically stuck there for a moment, and when he came down, I gave him a two-handed open-palmed thrust to knock him into the wall again. I paid only enough attention to make sure I didn't bounce him into one of the other players. They'd scattered below me, the reason I liked the wall, a clear target I could throw Brick at least till I broke it, which I did with the second hit. Brick went through the wall in a rain of his namesake. Oh, rats. I jumped through the hole after him and into the rapidly clearing bar. They'd heard the fighting, and when I came through, most did the smart thing and made for the doors, but a few actually started shooting. It stung, like getting shot by rubber bands, and I ignored them. Putting a foot on Brick's left arm, I ground my right knee into his back, put his right arm in a lock, and pushed like I was trying to fly us both through the floor beneath us. The wood floor groaned, and I leaned down. Brick, I said in a conversational voice, you know what to do. And he did. I was only shaking a little this time, and managed to hide it as the police moved in around me and Brick to pack everybody up. They'd come in the front as soon as they heard gunshots, and I pulled Brick back into the card room so we could have them all in one place till the paddy wagon pulled around back. I'd have to tell Atlas I hadn't used the door. Either door. Artemis put hoods over vacuum and lighter before the police came in the back. Their files said that they pretty much couldn't use their powers on what they couldn't see. Cutter wore chainmail mittens with his cuffs. I sat Brick down in one of the unbroken chairs. He had to sit sideways because of the titanium thumb cuffs. Ma'am? Sergeant Donahue stepped in the back door. Yes, Sergeant? Paddy wagon's here. We've cleaned up the front. You don't have to tell me, Sergeant. Yours, not mine. He actually blushed, an impressive sight on a red-haired South Side Irish boy. No, ma'am, you're right. He nodded to us both. Thank you. Right this way. We watched from the roof again as the paddy wagons pulled away. Artemis sat on the ledge and pulled her feet up. I was never around for the other arrests, you know, where I'd drop a tip. This is much more fun. I agreed. I just wish I wasn't so scared. She threw her head back and laughed. Really? I couldn't tell by watching. Atlas taught me that. You have to fight, do it hard, get it over with. Less chance of getting hurt. And I didn't really hurt Brick that much. It was more a win by intimidation. She propped her chin on a knee, pondering something. The shadow of her hood hid her face. Finally, she sighed. Men give you the most interesting gifts. Excuse me? Like how you told me that Andrew is chasing Quinn with a designer costume? My job with Blackstone means we talk a lot about the team and everything related. Do you know that Atlas pushed to bring you on the team? Not just to train you. Could have done that easily enough without making you a member. And the whole sidekick thing? She laughed. Which must be embarrassing at times, but it's a hell of a career booster. His idea. Says possessive, doesn't it? I didn't. Blackstone sold him on my joining by telling him you wanted me here too. And he's turned celibate since you've joined. They hardly ever see him at the fortress anymore. And tonight? Ajax thought you'd been too shaken by your first fight with Brick and didn't want to go it alone. You asked for it, and you got it. You remind me of one of my old high school BFFs. So smart, but when it came to boys, so dumb. I sat on the ledge. You don't know what you're talking about. It's happened before. Guys see me as this little girl they need to protect. My dad, my brothers, my friends' boyfriends. Half the reason I played field hockey was to show them all I didn't need it. And well, it didn't work. Protect? Her voice dripped sarcasm. I don't see anybody protecting you. I rolled my eyes. You know what I mean. They know what Brick can do. If they thought it was really an even fight, you think they would have let me near him again on my own? Nobody else in that room could have hurt me. You might be right there. Big shock, you're still a rookie. Gee, thanks. Well, I gave it my best shot. She unfolded and stood on the edge. If you won't listen, don't hate me later for saying I told you so. She missed it away before I could respond, which hardly seemed fair. Chapter 31. Secret identities sound cool, but are a pain in the butt to maintain. Most of the time, the problem isn't being recognized in costume, it's being tripped up in your civilian life. Even the comic books recognize this. It's the reason Clark Kent was a reporter and Bruce Wayne was a gazillionaire. In the real world, most heroes with secret identities wind up spending almost all their time in costume anyway. No private life, no time for a 9-to-5 job. And if you're a career hero, unless you make a special effort, you hang with other capes. On the job and off. Astra, notes from a life. The day after that great supervillain roundup, I got a text message from the anarchist. TA 12/27/2000. Since we were in the 21st century, I took the message to mean he would drop by in 2 days after Christmas at 8 p.m. 2000 hours in military time. I made the one call I needed to, and then all I could do was wait. Artemis denied inheriting any vamp-related phobias from her sire, but according to legend, vampires can't enter a home without an invitation. So, she got one. Mom cheated by extending the invitation in person while visiting the dome the day before Christmas. Never had a chance. On Christmas Eve, I rounded up Jackie and the bees for one last foray into the wilds of Macy's. Macy's on Christmas Eve in Chicago? Are you crazy? I wouldn't. You'd have to pay me. I would not go into a Macy's on Christmas Eve. It's a jungle in there. Anyway, we were webcamming almost nightly, and they'd hit it off with Jackie so fast I wondered if secret handshakes were involved. There's something about a shared cheerleader past. We ate desserts under the Christmas tree in the walnut room. Jackie had the hot chocolate. Then carried away our loot to join my family for midnight mass at St. Chris. Father Nolan added some modern songs into the mix this year, and the youth band did One King, Blessed is the Child, and Some Children See Him. It was beautiful, and after the service I introduced him to Jackie. He took her hand and said something wonderful sounding in Latin. Bless the man. Mom wouldn't hear of Jackie not spending the night, and we shared my bed since all the boys were home, and Aaron and Josh had brought their families. Our house was big, but not that big. Christmas morning began happy and loud. One niece, 2 nephews so far, and now apparently a beagle. By the way, you can photograph a vampire. It's very hard for a fiend of the night to look all dark and tragic getting a tongue bath from a beagle puppy. See, now I'm thinking about, I forgot, for like 5 seconds, I was so wrapped up in all the Christmas that I was like, wait a minute. Why was she not, like, exploding from being at mass? I guess if she was invited. But still, like, the crosses, though. I'm sure there's a reason behind the camera that we didn't see. Anyway, we left before sunrise on the excuse that we had other people to see. Mom loaded Artemis down with Christmas cake, not being in on the whole liquid diet thing, called the kids out to say goodbye to Aunt Hope and Aunt Jackie, and let us go with hugs and kisses all around. I nearly laughed at Artemis's panicked look. We drove back to the dome in silence. Atlas and I spent the rest of the morning seeing those other people, kids waiting for us to make deliveries for Santa at a half-dozen children's shelters. The story was we'd met him on his flight and offered to help. Atlas bounced a lot of kids on his knee, answered endless questions, ho-ho-ho'd a lot, and his smiles were real. I couldn't take my eyes off of him, and he kept catching me. Once back at the dome, I put on jeans and a sweatshirt, went to play Santa Claus for our team, and found Artemis with Chakra, Blackstone, Atlas, and Quinn preparing Christmas dinner with Willis in the kitchen. Blackstone was an amazing cook, serving up a honey-glazed ham, yams, stuffing, cranberry sauce, and the fluffiest rolls imaginable, while Bing Crosby and Burl Ives sang in the background. It almost made up for not being home. The evening ended with a Christmas movie marathon, but afterward I changed back into costume and took a flight. The lights of Chicago spread below me in beautiful crosshatch patterns under the full moon, looking like a geometric field of stars beneath my feet. 3,000 feet up, I took off my mask and earbud and clipped both to my belt. A sudden drop in temperature had put a lot of ice crystals in the upper atmosphere, and a brilliant halo ringed the moon. Commuter planes roared quietly by far below. It was a beautiful Christmas night. The night sky had become my sanctuary. Then I realized I wasn't alone. Atlas had come up to join me. He changed back into uniform too, minus the mask. He floated up beside me. Come up here often? I started giggling and covered my mouth. A pickup line? Here? His lips twitched. Artemis told me you're up here all the time these days. Where do you go? I like the mountains, so I've got a cabin in the Rockies. Can only fly there on my off-duty days, but I'm probably there 2-3 weeks a year. Less recently. That sounds nice. A city girl, I love summer camp because of all the stars I couldn't see in town. We were both quiet, then he turned to face me. Hope, we haven't really talked since the Christmas ball, but I'm not blind. If I was, Chakra would laugh the stupid out of me long ago. But now isn't... No! I said desperately, feeling the blood roaring into my cheeks as my heart dropped into my feet. Please, no. I shook my head in denial. It's not like that. It's not like that. I'm just... Hope. You really don't have to say anything. It'll pass, really. He grabbed my shoulders. Hope, shut up. Shut up? What are we, 10? No, thank God. But I was gonna say that now is not the right time. Well, but I know how you feel about... Hell, half the team does. Chakra had words with me. So it's only fair for me to tell you where I'm at, too. He ran a hand through his hair. Damn it. You're necessary to me. Lord, that sounds stupid, but I must have looked like a stunned fish. He stopped and laughed, but not like anything was funny. Yep, got me that way, too. All I thought I had to do was to keep you out of trouble. His hands dropped to my arms as he looked at me, and I couldn't look away. But what do we do? Not a damn thing, he said, his voice rough. Like I said, it's not the right time. Not for anything, mind you. We're not through with your training. You need to know what you want. I need you to know what you want. You can have it all, but I'm still fixing things that need to be fixed. We got plenty of time. You understand? I nodded convulsively. Time. Yeah. But when he let go, I panicked. He went stiff as a board when I wrapped my arms around his neck. I hid my face, mortified, but his hands came up, sliding up my arms to gently pull me away. His smile was gone, and I couldn't read him at all. Then he kissed me. A chaste kiss, but not quick. And his breath stroked my cheek when he pulled away, resting his forehead against mine. Panic had flown, and now I fought the absurd urge to start giggling again. He lifted his head back to watching me, but his mouth had softened and his eyes were bright. We hung there beneath the moon, only breathing for what seemed forever. The only other sound, the swelling and fading roar of jet engines, far beneath us. I do come here often, I whispered. I couldn't get any strength into my voice, and I didn't know what to do with my hands. Then I won't. Time. I nodded because he was right. He let me go, and I felt as cold as I really should have been as he sank out of sight, leaving me alone again under the moon. But the cold went away as I breathed, and the haloed moon looked down, and I laughed, dancing through the air in its clean, pale light. As I'm reading this, it's really interesting. As we go, I'm remembering more and more of this book as we continue on here, and I'm now from when we first started reading this book, I really felt like oh man, I'm gonna look at this in a completely different light than I did when I was reading it when I was young, and there's so many things that I'm looking at this completely differently. And this is absolutely one of them. Like, I thought this was, when I was reading this as a teenager, I thought this was just egregiously cheesy. Like, oh man, they have to do a romance plot. And now I'm like, well, it's pretty well executed. I'll give it points for that. Do I care for it? I'm gonna keep that to myself until we finish reading this book, because, I feel like as we go, my opinions will develop. And, this is something that I really enjoy about reading books that haven't read in a very long time, is seeing how my opinions change toward them. And this doesn't just go for classics that we're reading on paper cuts normally. This goes for stuff like Wearing the Cape, things that I read in high school that I was like, oh man, this thing is fascinating because this thing is fascinating because that thing's fascinating. And now I come at it as more of an adult, and I'm looking at it completely differently. This series, and there's one other one that was kind of, oh man, I don't remember the name of it, but it kind of plays into a lot of conspiracy theories and technobabble. It's really, really good at what I would describe as Catholic technobabble. I'll have to look up the titles of these books and mention them in the Discord, but it's really good at that, and I absolutely loved it as a teen. But now I'm sitting here and I'm like, if I read this again, what would I feel about that? It's very entertaining to see how a book changes based on how the person reading it has changed. I look at a huge portion of the arc in this book completely differently now. And you'll see as we continue on here into part 7, what I mean. There are parts of this book coming up very quickly, specifically involving the Dark Anarchist and the Tea Time Anarchist, that my opinion on these are going to be completely different from what I used to think as a kid. But like these I gotta give a lot of credit to these books. They're really like it's a solidly done teenage superhero narrative, and I've been enjoying it a whole lot, and I hope you all have been too. Let's dive back in and start it on part 7, shall we? Chapter 32. We define ourselves as much by what we oppose as what we approve, what we won't do as much as what we will. Each choice we make forecloses other choices while making still more choices necessary. Life is a decision tree. We climb half blind. Astra, Notes from a Life. I went back home Christmas night. I needed to be where I wouldn't accidentally run into Atlas for a little while. When it had been a hopeless love, I'd had it under control. Well, mostly. Now, just thinking about his kiss, I felt the flush down to my navel, and it scared me as much as it thrilled. It scared me as much as it thrilled me. I needed time before I could face him, or anyone else in the dome, for that matter. Fortunately, I'd scheduled the entire block from Christmas to New Year's as catch-up time, and since it seemed more than one of them had been playing matchmaker, they could all wait. And I wanted to spend a little more time with my parents before the 27th. I had no idea what would happen then. I got to see Aaron and Josh and their families off the next day. Aaron slung little Katie over his shoulder, so she waved at us behind his back. Cindy, who was really nice, had Marcus in one hand and Snoopy's leash in the other. Josh and Michelle practically had to drag Anthony away, screaming over leaving his grandma. Even Toby headed back to his own on-campus apartment to study. So, when are you going to tell him, dear? Mom asked, putting an arm around me as we walked back inside. I sighed, resting my head on her shoulder. How about never? Dad certainly took his time. I told each of your brothers when they graduated from high school, he said. I'm not sure it's the same. It's exactly the same. I have 3 overprotective brothers, even Toby. It's probably a good thing I never had a real boyfriend. Can you imagine what they'd say now? I think you underestimate them, dear, Mom disagreed. So they're more evolved than Dad, but they'd worry a lot. Aaron and Josh have their own families to worry about. They don't need to worry about their little sister. Dad just smiled, letting the more evolved dig pass. We carefully didn't talk about it, but he still hoped to have less to worry about soon. And they'd be right to worry. You've always been too contained about things. When you get sick and almost, well, all those doctors and tests and the surgery, and never a peep from you, the same, well, you know. I know, Dad. I hugged him with my free arm. And I promise if it gets to be too much, you'll know. But now? I pulled away from both of them. I've got to show you what we can do with Jackie's present. Artemis had presented us with a big box on Christmas morning. Opening it, we found it filled with bags of gourmet coffee beans, ingredients, and a handwritten recipe journal. Mom's kitchen had everything else, and I sat them down to enjoy a Jackie creation. Fancy coffee, English cream, cinnamon and shaved German chocolate. We talked for hours about the team, about my experiences, my meeting the president. Not a word about my ultimate plans or the things I most wanted to talk to them about. The anarchist, Atlas, especially Atlas. Every time my mind wandered there, I felt all woogie, doing the happy dance inside one moment and the next wanting to run screaming. It was making me dizzy. Ever perceptive, Mom caught the mood swings that had nothing to do with the conversation, but she didn't pry. The next night found me ready. When the anarchist popped up into my room, I was sitting cross-legged on my bed in a university tank top and sleeping shorts with the Fall of Rome open in my lap. Hello, Ho. Smiling, I closed the book and stood, picking up the picture and a holiday-wrapped can. I handed him the picture, and when he took it, I grabbed his wrist and popped the can of freeze foam, discharging it in a pile on his feet. What? He tried to pull back, and I'm sure jump out of time, but I was bigger than a bread box. When the freeze foam set, I released his wrist and searched him, relieving him of his zap gun and several other items in his coat pockets. Through all that, he didn't say a word. Finished, I stooped down and retrieved the picture he'd dropped. Now, I said, handing it back to him, tell me about that picture. My voice shook. He looked at me like I'd morphed into the nightmare I'd fought on Michigan Avenue. Then, at the picture, the camera shot of him and the Brotherhood's lawyers. He went pale. Hope, this isn't what it looks like. Is it you? No and yes. People died in that riot. You set it up? Like people died in the bombing. Innocent people. If you did one, you did the other. Convince me my eyes are lying or I'm taking you in. He was silent for a long moment. I tried to control my breathing. Do you remember the story of Schrodinger's cat? What? Existing in a state of superposition till someone opens the box. In a way, it's two cats, one alive, the other dead. Yes? I'm the only physical time traveler I'm aware of, and I'd have noticed anyone else. But I'm Schrodinger's cat. My breakthrough created two of me in an ongoing state of superposition. His privilege present, a microsecond behind mine. It's all very quantum. You're saying that he's not you, he's your evil twin? No, he's me too, just the me that came from a different choice. How's that possible? He blows people up. You do. We're connected because we're the same person. Just bisected temporally. I always know when he's close in time, operating in the present, and he can feel me too. If one of us dies, our states will become too divergent, superposition will collapse, and I'm pretty sure we both die. Do you remember what I told you about my trip to the future? The totalitarian future I set out to change? Yes. That was a lie. I've been much farther. The farthest we traveled together is 2102. Farthest I've been able to travel since has been around 2150. After that, the probabilities expand too far for any one future to be sufficiently likely to lock onto. Took me years of practice to be able to get that far. Its variants are where most of my gadgets come from. This isn't helping. He talked faster. We both saw the future, and we saw a good one. By the end of the 21st century, the world's a pretty amazing place, but we studied the future history too. Human race goes through a lot of pain getting there. We thought we saw ways we could make it easier. Introduce future technology earlier. Alert politicians to the kind of diplomatic errors that led to megadeath events like World War II. I'm sure you see what I mean. Have you ever had an argument with someone where you could have gone either way? You went the way you did because the other guy argued against it. I argued for gradual mitigation, he argued for direct intervention. We fought and went our separate ways. Artemis's electrolasers, freeze foam you just use, spin-offs of patents I mine from the future. Some areas, especially medical science. Technology is 10 years ahead of where it would have been. The divergence is accelerating. But then, why? Because the far future shifted radically. While I'd been exploring the far future, he'd been exploiting next year, making long-shot investments he knew would pay out quick to build up millions, used his wealth to assemble an organization, used blackmail from scandals that would have come out in the future to gain influence. He redirected the evolution of politics in this country till he got us on track for the possible future police state he was working toward. The story about the first bombing? My attempt to track him from one of his direct interventions. Why does he want a police state? Because he doesn't want the next few decades to hurt as much. If he gets his way, they won't. But it won't be a free future. He looked on sadly. Since our split, both of us have grown more extreme in the lengths we'll go to in order to achieve our particular goals for humanity. I created the Tea Time Anarchist in my first bid to take back the future, and he subverted the symbol. I knew the first time he used a bomb in my name that he'd gone too far to turn back, no matter the cost. So I've been mining the future, planning the endgame I described to you. This has to stop. He held the picture out to me. Sorry about the riot. What was he trying to accomplish? By shutting down the gangs, you made a strong statement for local enforcement. Did a lot to weaken the supervillain subculture. You helped people, voters especially, sleep easier. He tried to change that by engineering the riot to undo your victory. Scared people, they're more likely to embrace extreme measures. Now he smiled. But you brought Artemis aboard, and she discovered the critical evidence needed to put the conspiracy together. Tracking down Syjack, re-arresting most of Chicago's current crop of supervillains, you reversed his win, saved the day, as it were. That's not why Is that what you meant about my standing in the way of his plans for the future? No, not at least specifically. Let's say that you're a catalyst for some changes, some much bigger than this. Since Christmas was 2 days ago, I assume you and Atlas have grown closer. I blushed hotly. Oh, future history. He nodded. Atlas has been burning out. Happens to policemen who spread their career in a rough precinct. The abrasion the soul takes from dealing with bad people. Little compromises year after year. Before the change that brought you as Astra into the timeline, he was becoming more and more ruthless. It wasn't going to end well. You're saying I re-inspired him, I suppose. Became the voice of his earlier idealism. There's no certainty to this, but you've changed his path wherever it may lead in the future. Because of Christmas? No, because of the fight you had in October. And Christmas, and later. A man must be worthy of the woman he loves, after all. His autobiography is certainly fascinating. I don't want to know. But I did. Badly. What would Christmas lead to? The anarchist could tell me, or at least he could tell me what was likely to happen. Just thinking about what I wanted to happen made me flush to my toes, but I'd been distracted, and the time came for part 2. He paled when I picked up my cell phone. I'm not calling to take you in, but I was wrong before to simply trust you. I don't have the right to trust you without some kind of proof. I pointed the phone at him. So, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to make a call on speaker. You're going to keep quiet while I talk. Then I'm going to ask you 3 questions, which you'll answer yes or no. Got it? He nodded, watching me carefully. I hit speed dial and got 2 rings, then a calm, even voice. Hello. He'd been waiting for my call. Good evening, Veritas. Thank you for agreeing to this. Happy to be of service. Okay then, I'm here with my guest. Are you ready? A dry laugh. Of course. You may proceed. I took a breath and stepped close, holding the phone up so Veritas could hear us on the speaker setting. Are you responsible for any of the bombings claimed by the Tea Time Anarchist? He looked at the phone in my hand, then focused on me. No. Are you responsible for the Freak Zone riot? No. Is everything else you told me tonight true? Yes. Veritas? All 3 statements are true. Am I ever going to hear what this is about? Probably not. Sorry. As I warned you before, I have to file a report of this interview. You are confident that this will create no troubles for you down the road? Since I just interviewed an innocent man, I don't see how it could. He laughed again. You've got a point. Until next time, then. Thank you. Happy New Year. The same. He hung up. The anarchist shook his head. Veritas, the man who sees all lies. I shut the phone and sighed, relieved beyond words. I won't apologize for tricking you. I wanted to trust you, but I couldn't. Not with people dying. He considered me for another moment and nodded, even smiled a little. I understand, but I think it's time for me to go. You can always place another personal. Yes, but will you come? The smile widened. Oh, yes. The freeze foam ruined the carpet. That's so funny. He was just like, well, I guess she's serious. I had better wait until she's made her point. Like, he was just sitting there the whole time. Like, he was not bound by the freeze foam. It was just kind of hanging out there. Like, it's more a matter of, like, things that are too big just straight up won't come with him. It's not really blocking him from moving. Or at least that's kind of what's implied there. Who knows if it'll actually, actually resolve in us finding out more about his powers. So, I know whether it'll resolve, but I'm not going to spoil it for you. I'd like to once again plug that this is indeed a podcast we're recording. There's actually episodes going up, most likely sometime tomorrow or Sunday, anytime before the end of the month. But we're actually shifting. That actually brings up a really great point. We're actually shifting our release schedule after this month in May. We're actually shifting to a once weekly approach here. As the podcast feed has finally caught up to what's happening in season 3, the last few episodes of season 2 going up before the end of this month. As we're shifting to season 3, we're actually shifting to a weekly release model rather than episodes dropping in one large lump all at once. First of all, I'd like to give people a little more time to listen to the episodes, really digest what's going on week to week, and secondly, I just really think it saves me a lot of time in post production. Not having to get 3, 4, 5 hours worth of content done all at once. Uh, and I think the shift will be very advantageous for everyone. So I've been looking forward to it. As soon as we started recording season 3, I very intentionally uh, have been formatting the live show around this schedule change. So keep an eye on the podcast feed. We'll actually be getting to guarding Gus in May. In the meanwhile, if you are a little bit annoyed at how behind the podcast feed can be, the YouTube VOD channel actually tends to have the chance to get ahead of the podcast feed as it releases as it releases potentially more often and in a different format than the podcast. So that's definitely worth a look. Last but not least, actually, while I'm thinking about it, one more thing I have to plug is the Codex. That's the Twitch team I'm on. We're all read streamers. We all kind of run the gamut on genre and whether we're reading public domain or author permission. Um, so if you like what I do here, definitely go check some of them out. There should be a link below me if you're on Twitch. If you're on YouTube, check out what I just posted in the chat. There is a Discord for the Codex where we get together, talk about reading, streaming, occasionally do group projects, especially with especially of late. I've been really leaning in on wanting to play some tabletop RPGs. I don't know, I've just kind of had that in mind, and I would love to pitch a game to the Codex gang. Honestly, picking up this particular fate system wouldn't be terrible. That, or I always have some clever ideas in the back of my head for Monster of the Week. But I just like to point out that the Codex exists and we're all read streamers, and uh, I think if you like what I do here, you'll like everybody else. Anyway, drink a little water, and then we can resume our book. Oh. Water. Anyway, chapter 33. Natural disasters are the place where Atlas types really shine. Not in prevention, this isn't the comics. We can't stop forest fires, tidal waves, or tornadoes with our breath like Superman, but getting in fast when speed and strength counts means victims saved. For someone like me, there's no personal danger involved. I'm tougher than anything nature could dish out, but it's still the hardest part of my job. No matter how fast we respond, we can't save everybody. Astra, notes from a life. Also, before we dive into this chapter, I want to point out that that is a real thing. The talk about, like, cops experiencing burnout and becoming more and more jaded over the tour of their careers, especially for folks that have a lot of difficult calls or are in uh, the politest way I can think to put it is heavily policed neighborhoods. Uh, they burn out and they get less willing to give people the grace of the moment of a breath. This is a problem not only in policing but also EMS at large. This concept of being in such difficult situations, it, it really it really engenders a need for therapeutic response to keep people, safe and healthy. And unfortunately, uh, the stereotypical type of person that is attracted by that job is usually not willing to give therapy a lot of credit. So if you are EMS, if you are, a member of the police force, if you do something like that, I would heartily suggest therapy. PTSD isn't just for one big thing that happened to you. It can build up over many small things that you thought were just, oh yeah, that was just a little thing. That was just a little thing. You can build complex PTSD from many small traumatic events. So even if you don't feel like you need help, it is likely to help you. I just wanted to point that out. Sorry, the moment in the book there made me really think about that. And there's been a lot of push behind the scenes for uh focus on care in the cases of complex PTSD and trying to stop that before it starts. At least in the case of EMS, I don't know what that looks like in the case of policing. I don't have any experience there, but I have family who are EMS, and there's been focus on how important it is to keep yourself safe so that you can continue to help people. So I just wanted to really bring that up as important and pressing. Even if you feel like you've got it well in hand, it's liable to help, and it's better than doing nothing. To put it in a nutshell, it's better to do something than to have your brain throw enforced system maintenance at you. It's like taking care of your tools. You take care of your tools and then they don't break, rather than them breaking and then you having to do maintenance anyway. But anyway, I digress. I could carry on about that. I could carry on quite aggressively about that, actually. It's very important. Oh, of course. Of course the internet dies in the middle of that. Are we good? Are we alive? Okay, good. The book we were reading, remember that? All sentinels to the emergency room. All sentinels to the assembly room. The raw urgency of the call lifted me out of my chair, Artemis right behind me. I'd hoped staying away until New Year's would give me some time to calm down and regain some cool on the subject of a certain beloved man, but Artemis had taken one look at me on New Year's morning and delivered her promised, "I told you so." The call caught us over one of her creations. We beat everyone but Atlas. He gave me a look that lasted less than a second on his otherwise frozen face as he continued to listen to his earbug. The rest piled in behind us, Rush, ironically, the last to arrive. You think he does that on purpose? He waited till we were all at the table to speak. 5 minutes ago, an earthquake hit Southern California, and it's the big one, folks. Reports are still coming in. FEMA's activating all superhuman reserve assets as they get clearance from state governors, but we're moving now. Nimbus, you report to the Hollywood Knights since you can be there in seconds. Get coordinates from the city room and go find Rook. He'll plug you into their response plan. Go. Nimbus nodded and flashed away. Orestes, grab your mission kits. They're prepping our jet at O'Hare. CAI disaster list and reserve sentinels will be right behind us. 5 minutes, people. Get moving. And we got. 5 minutes later, we met at the roof bay, and those of us who could fly carried those who couldn't. Artemis wore her day suit, but she couldn't safely turn to mist in daylight. We don't have a team jet, despite what the TV series says. We don't operate outside of Chicago enough, so instead we contract with a private jet company. They get a nice fee to make sure that one of the jets in their fleet is always available, able to be stocked and fueled in minutes. 10 minutes after arriving at O'Hare, we were wheels up and headed for LA, but Atlas and I arrived far ahead of the jet. I'd been clocked at 640 mile an hour, but as Dr. Beth had said, humans aren't naturally streamlined for aerodynamics. At that speed, I spend a lot of my energy just fighting the air. Atlas wanted us there faster, so he took us up above 15,000 feet, where the air was thin. Here's what we're going to do. You can't go much faster than the jet, but we need to be there now. So, you're going to hang on to me. He pointed his ankles. Grab on and aim like you're doing target practice. I did, and felt my arms try to come off at the shoulders as we broke the sound barrier. The parental glower singularity, the compressed sphere of cloud vapor that rode the shockwave of our passage, wrapped around us as we flew. I could only hold on. If I lost my grip and slipped out of the zone, if I lost my grip and slipped out of the zone Atlas's speed created, I'd tumble out of the sky, smacked by unbroken air and more than twice the velocity I could deal with. Later, I learned we broke Mach 2. Wait a minute. So 640 mile an hour, at what height would you need to be going twice the speed of sound? That's like an air density question, because like the speed Mach 1 is not a set speed. It changes based on the density of the air you're moving through. So let's just for fun here, at what height would 640 mile an hour, for example, be Mach 1? I have no idea if I can get this answer out of Google. Would 640 miles per hour be Mach 1? Speed of sound at different altitudes and temperatures. Speed of sound, meters per second, miles per hour. Speed of sound levels off at 40,000 feet at 659.8 miles per hour. So up above 15,000 feet. Let's say they're at 20,000 feet. They're going at least 706 miles an hour 2 times. So that's 1,400 miles an hour. That's crazy fast. Yeah, so for context, I was asking whether Astra could reach Mach 1 at any altitude. Technically, no. 659 is the lowest Mach speed it gets. Interesting, though. Anyway, even then, it took us over an hour to reach LA. Dispatch streamed an info dump over my earbud on the way. Seismic stations were reporting in, so we had a sketch of the unfolding disaster. California sat on the San Andreas Fault, a major fault line in the Pacific's ring of fire, and Californians often joked about the upcoming big one. Well, it came. Horribly worse, it hadn't just come, it had been triggered. The slip in the vault had been kicked off by an imposed shock event. Fancy talk, for someone did this. Their best guess was a beyond A-class Terrakinetic. Dispatch relayed the timeline of the event with clinical detachment as we flew. At 6:23 a.m. Pacific time, seismic stations caught the earth shock, followed by the first rupture in the fault near Bombay Beach, north of the Salton Sea. The rupture traveled north along the fault at 2 miles a second, past LA and Lancaster, nearly reaching Bakersfield. The quake peaked at 9.0 on the Richter scale, an order of magnitude stronger than anything California had been expecting or planning for, and the released tectonic tension snapping along the fault slid the ground on both sides more than 100 feet. Dispatch put it into perspective. The earthquake that leveled and burned most of San Francisco in 1906 weighed in at 8.0. Pounded by the city by the bay with 1,000 megatons, a gigaton of ground-shaking force. The largest nuclear bomb ever tested, for comparison, delivered about 50 megatons, so imagine firing off 20 of those firecrackers underground. This one released 32 gigatons of force, 32 times more force than the San Francisco earthquake. California is full of fault lines, and the rupture of the San Andreas triggered quakes the length of the state and as far inland as Vegas. Fortunately, the secondary quakes didn't rise above the level of cracking pavement and breaking windows. San Francisco, to its credit, came through almost undamaged. As we flew, dispatch sorted and passed damage reports by the nationwide response system. The high-amplitude ground waves were radiating out from the fault had flattened Palm Springs. The walls of the Coachella Valley, directing the waves, turned its sediment basin into bouncing jello, and hardly a building remained standing. San Diego, San Bernardino, Anaheim, LA, and other cities built on sedimentary plains got pounded nearly as hard. Earthquake preparedness is a big thing in California, and its buildings, bridges, and roads had been designed to take a lot, but they hadn't been designed to take this. To make the situation worse, the San Andreas Fault was a strike-slip fault. The 100 feet or so of lateral slippage created a disaster in itself, severing interstate freeways 10, 15, and 5, along with Pacific rail lines. cut water conveyance tunnels, pipes, aqueducts, power transmission towers, even telecommunication cables. Power, water, transportation, the lifeblood of cities. None of it flowed any longer, and the broken cities burned. An old college buddy of Dad's teaches at USD, and just about every spring we escape to sunny Southern California, land of palm trees, backyard pools, and endless beaches. Paradise on Earth. But flying into LA looked more like Paradise Lost. We went subsonic on LA's outskirts. Falling buildings had reduced downtown LA to rubble. Beneath winter storm clouds, fires burned in its shattered core, and smoke climbed out of a cloud of dust that covered everything for miles in the chill morning light. It was the Ashland overpass taken to the next level of awfulness. The one piece of good fortune in the disaster was its timing. On New Year's morning, the 200,000 plus commuters that normally drove into LA to work mostly stayed home with their families. But lots of high-rise apartments hadn't made it through the quake, aftershocks threatening the surviving towers. Fallen overpasses, burst pipes, fractured pavement, and downed power lines blocked the roads. We were at a loss to where to begin, but FEMA's Urban Search and Rescue Division directed us through dispatch to the LA Children's Hospital on Sunset and Hollywood. Its taller wing had come down, along with parts of the medical centers next to it, and emergency workers reported fire. Landing by the fallen building, we found a hydrokinetic villain who frantically introduced himself as Riptide. Around him, water condensed from nothing into twin spouts that cascaded through the wreckage in waves. As hospital workers and volunteers cleared around him, he fought to smother the fire without drowning anyone trapped beneath it, keeping it away from the 40-bed newborn and infant critical care unit. Already there, Nimbus directed the work, searching out buried pockets of survivors, her photonic form able to go anywhere light could penetrate. Atlas and I followed her in, using our own enhanced senses, pushing aside fallen walls and twisted framework, opening crawl spaces and digging into the ruin under her direction. We dug for hours in the haze. Dust settled into everything, caked everything, turned into mud. The workers around me hacked and spat black gobs, wrapping their faces in damp bandage gauze to keep from choking on it as we dug. Each body we found was a tragedy deferred till later. Each living victim we recovered was a win very briefly celebrated. No one worked harder than Atlas, clearing rubble through aftershocks that buried us more than once. The rest of the team came in a couple hours behind us, and Chakra used her psychic powers to locate pockets even Nimbus couldn't find. Blackstone teleported down to them wherever we found room. Artemis, down in the dark, misted through the rubble and brought the smallest children back with her to the edge of daylight. Ajax joined in the digging, and Rush and Quinn turned out to be licensed EMTs. We combed through the wreckage till nightfall, doing days' worth of search and rescue work in hours. Dead or alive, we took them to the emergency camp set up in nearby Barnsdall Park, where surviving staff did what they could for the injured with scavenged supplies. We laid the dead in rows, wrapping them with cut garbage bags. Atlas's face was stone, and the part of my mind not occupied with the task of the moment filled with the prayer from that Monday in Chicago. God, look after your newest angels. Be with the ones who mourn them now. It became my litany of grief. Yeah, as someone who has been to California many a time and is currently living in the Bay Area, this is now hitting me a completely different way. At the time I read it, it was all very like distant, like, oh, it's all the way in California. I've never even seen an earthquake, and now I'm aware of earthquakes much more than I was previously. I was so used to for many years tornadoes being the standard natural disaster, and it's a lot less abstract now. Anyway, we've got time. Yeah, we've got time for at least one more chapter. Let's dive into chapter 34. If the advent of superhumans has largely increased the power of non-government groups to make war, it's also significantly impacted humanity's ability to respond to disaster. In the California earthquake, nearly 300 emergency-capable superhumans reached the stricken cities of Southern California in the first day. In contrast, it took the U.S. Marines 3 days to begin significant operations centered around the emergency base that became Fort Whittier. It took 5 days for the USS Nimitz and its carrier fleet to reach L.A. Harbor. Superhumans have become first responders in cases of natural disaster. Dr. Benjamin Svenkel, World Health Organization report. The storm finally broke that evening, washing away the dust as we worked through the night and into the next day. More CAI superhumans with emergency-appropriate powers arrived in the morning, and I found myself directing a put-up team of CAIs from all over the country. Riptide had come to the hospital New Year's morning to see his nephew, who'd come through without a scratch, and he became the assigned waterman for our zone as soon as the disaster coordinators learned about it. Once he wasn't needed for fires anymore, he purified and stored thousands of gallons of runoff at ours. "My peeps can look after themselves, you know," he said when I asked him about it. "My sister got trapped at Mom's in San Diego. I'm gonna stick around in case Carlos needs me, and might as well pitch in since I'm here." He seemed almost embarrassed, with his shiny tattooed head, mustache, soul patch, and the blue t-shirt with a spray-painted Pisces symbol that he wore under a long canvas coat. He looked like what he was, a supervillain gangbanger. But he worked as hard as anybody, and we needed him. Of course it makes sense for a villain to, jump in a disaster situation, especially, he's obviously not local. He flew in to see his nephew. He's from San Diego, but, it makes sense for a villain to jump in and help people, because it's like, if they're from here, they feel strongly about their community, they just don't go about it legally, Anyway, I could carry on there, but I won't. I half expected Dad to be assigned to our scratch-built search and rescue teams, but because of his experience, FEMA assigned him to work with Mr. Ludlow, recently out of rehab, and other members of the crew. As soon as they landed, they got to work clearing roads, replacing fallen bridges and overpasses with temporary patches. Taking Dad's advice, I recognized the capes on my team as cutters, lifters, and seekers, amazed at what powers were useful. One woman, Entropy, sped up the decay of inorganic compounds. We used her to weaken wall sections, so volunteer diggers could easily break them up. Vector, a gravity controller, lowered the local gravity so they could lift away huge chunks just as easily as I could. They stood us down at sunset on day 2 and directed our teams to a nearby Motel 6 they'd commandeered as a rest center for out-of-town heroes like us. We were filthy. We had no running water, but Riptide had joined us, pulling water from the air to fill all the containers we could find, so at least we got to rinse and wipe down. A neighboring supermarket opened its aisles for us. Atlas and I flew to the airport and brought back our field gear pallets, which included a satellite uplink. We turned on the news to learn that the government of California had asked for all possible help within minutes of the quake. President Touches Clouds had declared a national state of emergency. FEMA was on the move, and hundreds of superhumans from all over the U.S. were converging on California if they weren't already here. I'd been focused on our part of the crisis, but now all I could do was to stare helplessly at the pictures of the devastation. LA and San Diego looked like they'd been carpet bombed. In some places, no building taller than 5 stories stayed standing. Commentators estimated the official death toll as 30,000 and rising, and the shattered state faced a humanitarian crisis. There are 4 parts to emergency management: mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. In the case of an earthquake, mitigation includes things like structural requirements for building and road safety. Lack of mitigation engineering is the biggest reason why earthquakes in third world countries kill far more people, after all. California's state government had planned for a major one for years now, but all their mitigation planning had been assuming an 8.2 strength quake, 4 gigatons tops. A 9.0 was far stronger than anyone considered using a reasonable risk factor, so lots of buildings that should have ridden it out didn't. Bridges hadn't been built or strengthened to take it. Only the day and time had kept the immediate death toll from skyrocketing into 6 digits. Preparedness failed for the same reason. The stockpiles of emergency supplies and number of trained and equipped emergency specialists weren't nearly up to handling a catastrophe this big. Southern California had become a rolling humanitarian disaster, waiting to get bigger. Nobody had much to say, so we headed into our rooms. Without a word, Atlas took my hand and led me into his. I started to protest when I realized what he'd done. "Hush up," he said, stripping the dust-laden cover off the bed and pushing me down to sit on the edge while he pulled off my boots. "This is hardly the place, and certainly not the time for anything, but you're not going to want to be alone tonight. Trust me." Tired as I was, I simply nodded, removed my gloves, belt, mask, and wig, and ran my fingers through my relatively clean hair. He reached up and detached my cape, then pushed me down to stretch out and spooned in behind me. I wondered if I was his teddy bear tonight, but I was out before he stopped moving. Sometime in the night I dreamed of rows of trash bag covered children and jerked awake, nearly paralyzed by a horrible realization. There was only one way the quake could have come without warning. Holding tight to the arm around me, I forced myself to stop shaking, willing myself to breathe normally. If the anarchist had known it was coming, he would have warned someone or stopped the person responsible. I had to believe that. If the quake really was caused by an unbelievably powerful telekinetic, then it would have been easy for him to spot it from the future, to prevent it from ever happening. So his twin must have intervened, made it happen when it hadn't happened before. I wanted to be sick. I even understood why DA had done it. The anarchist had said his nemesis was losing the political fight, that he didn't have enough popular support for the kind of regulations and control he needed to build. But not anymore. Not after this. After this, people would be scared, angry, vengeful even. How could any amount of good deeds make up for thousands dead? Politicians calling for registration, monitoring, restrictions, it all would seem so reasonable that it made sense if someone was willing to kill thousands. Simply made it more horrible. All those little bodies. I realized I was silently crying when Atlas's arm tightened. "You all right?" he whispered. When I shook my head, he turned me about so the spooning became a mutual embrace. He held me together, kept me from flying into a million pieces, and I squeezed my eyes shut, burrowing in as his human warmth drew me out of myself. When I finally relaxed, he adjusted us so I was comfortable, his breath stirring my hair. "Go to sleep," he whispered, and I nodded. I had work in front of me, but when we got home, I'd place another ad. The anarchist was right. It had to stop. There had to be something more I could do. In Atlas's arms, my new resolution was enough to take me back to sleep. You know what? Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I think we've got time for one more. Maybe see once if we can get a little farther away from this disaster scene. See where Hope's resolve will take her. Let's dive into chapter 35, shall we? In any large-scale disaster, the majority of fatalities often happen after the initial killing event. Tsunamis, typhoons, and earthquakes, especially, can completely disrupt the systems which sustain populations. Homes only keep enough food to last a few days. Local stores can be stripped as quickly. And if power, and therefore refrigeration, is lost, the local food supply shrinks immediately. In these situations, the first priority, once immediate rescue efforts are largely complete, is to restore these systems as rapidly as possible. Emergency Response Systems and Procedures, 2004. With the death toll reaching 38,000 by day 3, naturally the trauma of the quake created more breakthroughs. Most got to work wherever they could to pitch in, but not all of the new breakthroughs wanted to help. One of them tried to kill me. Dispatch had switched Atlas and me to flying pallets of food, water, and fuel to the new camps and distribution centers springing up everywhere, and the jet of superheated plasma caught me on my 8th supply run from Whittier Base. I screamed as my supposedly fire-resistant uniform went up in flames. Touched by a stream of disassociated ions, the fuel pallet I carried over my head exploded, throwing me downward. I cratered the residential street, pieces of burning pallet raining down all around me. Stunned, I lifted my head and saw the shooter. His rage-contorted face glowed, and waves of plasma rolled off him, making him look like a devil sprung from the pit. I only got as far as my knees before his next shot tumbled me down the street. His third shot blew me into someone's home where the street turned, and I ran out of pavement. I heard Atlas shouting, felt the fire on every inch of my skin. What'd I do to him? His anger felt personal, and I dazedly thought that if only I could talk to him, he'd stop. Instead, I ran. Not far, just through the house and into the backyard where I found the feature I prayed for. A family pool, the great California accessory. Thank you God, it had been covered for the winter but not drained. Went through the cover like it was tissue. Surfacing, I finally paid attention to the yelling in my earbud, miraculously intact under my scorched mask. Astra, damn it, are you alright? I inhaled with lungs that felt fragile. I'm here, I'm okay, I think. The burning dimmed, became ignorable, and I lifted myself out of the pool and flew over the house. In the street, I found Atlas had dropped his own pallet somewhere to directly engage my attacker. He grappled the burning man, standing inside his glowing and pulsating corona. His hands around his neck, he choked him at arm's length. As I landed beside them, stumbling, the shooter slumped and his plasma sheath disappeared. Atlas dropped him on the charred grass, and just like that, it was over. The infirmary at Restormo proved every bit as good as the Domes, with its own resident doctor of superhuman medicine. I wondered just how much the Hollywood Knights really used her skills. Dr. Carson helped me peel out of my burned costume, parts had melted to my skin, and checked me over inch by inch, even sticking a camera down my throat between cups of ick. It'll help restore you, she said. I was too shell-shocked for my iotrophobia to even twinge. She ran a gloved finger over the dark red patch just to the right of my belly button. How does that feel? I twitched as I inhaled. Like a bad sunburn? I hurt worse a few minutes ago. Your nerves are returning to their normal sensitivity. You can feel intense heat, but burning attacks need to work very hard to actually raise your body's temperature, even at the skin. If your attacker had had more time, well, it would have been bad. She snapped her gloves off one by one. As it is, your skin, throat, and lungs got baked a bit, but your recuperative powers are already taking care of it. By tomorrow, you'll be fine. She handed me a blue cotton jumpsuit. I'd come to realize the jumpsuit was standard hero wear for capes who'd trashed their outfits. I gingerly pulled it on and rolled up the legs and sleeves while she dictated into a recorder. Send your man in, she said when I finished dressing. I stepped out into the hall to find Atlas waiting. He looked me over, the stiffness going out of him. You all right? I nodded, a lump rising in my raw throat. She said it's your turn. I jerked my head at the door, not looking at him. The plasma user had turned up the heat when Atlas grabbed him, and it showed. Atlas didn't wear gloves, but the sleeves of his leather jumpsuit burned away. His hands glistened bright red. So did his face. He'd actually taken more hot plasma than I had, but he refused to be treated first. I held the door so he wouldn't have to touch it, and he went through it with a last look at me. Once the door closed, I put my back to the wall and slid down it. Sitting on my heels, I rested my forehead on my knees and concentrated on not losing it. I'd almost died. If I'd been alone, he might have killed me. Rook had dropped what he'd been doing and scrambled with a wagon and a police unit as soon as we called the incident in. Flew them in himself, even. Waiting for them, keeping a careful watch on our plasma guy, we'd talked to a couple of neighbors and to his hysterical domestic partner. Plasma guy wasn't a supervillain, he was just Bryce Walters, a divorced chemical engineer. He'd been given full custody of his son, Bryce Jr., but the boy had been at his mom's for the Christmas season in Anaheim. He'd allowed him to stay over for New Year's. Bryce's mom lived in a high-rise. I wiped my eyes. Cell service restored, a state emergency worker had called this morning to tell Bryce his son was dead. His partner, Tony, said he'd listened to the message, repeated it to her, and then stopped talking. Stopped doing anything, until hours later he looked out the bay windows and saw us flying overhead. Then he exploded, literally as well as figuratively. I'd seen the melted hole in their front windows, the scorched footprints across their lawn to the street. The guy was a vegetarian, a pacifist, member of Greenpeace even. And the sight of superhumans swanning across the sky while his son died in an earthquake one of them had caused, it triggered a rage fueled breakthrough. He'd shot me down, tried to kill me, just because I'd been closest. Bryce woke up before Rook arrived with restraints, but Atlas simply put his foot down, literally. He'd calmly informed Mr. Walters that if he tried to get up or ignited again, he'd put the boot through his neck. The threat hadn't been needed. Bryce was beaten. He hadn't said a word, hadn't even looked at Tony when Rook arrived, and they sedated him, locked him in restraints, and took him away. Rook said they'd take him to the block, California superhuman lockup, for processing and detainment until trial. I wish he could just go home. I wanted to go home. By the time Dr. Carlson finished with Atlas, I was back upright and steady, even smiling for their benefit. She called me back in, handed him a big tube of something, and waved us on our way. A waiting room full of normal patients waited for her, and she'd put them on hold to check us out so we could go back to work. Fortunately for us, our away gear always included spare costumes. Rush brought them to us at Restormal. The tube contained a gel for us to slather on after showering, which we did before changing. It smelled like peaches, and I smiled inside at the thought of a fruity-smelling Atlas. I felt naked without my mask and was intensely grateful to be back in costume. I also felt horribly exposed up in the air, but we got back on the job. The whole episode took little more than an hour, and really it had changed everything. Okay, I think we're going to call it there for the evening. Tune in next time to find out what happens in Chapter 36 to see what has changed for Astra and Atlas in response to suddenly being plasma blasted out of the sky, and further how the state of California is going to recover from such an egregious earthquake. One more time, I'm just going to mention that this, to the live watcher, I will once again remind you, this is a podcast. You have, by my count here, 108 episodes in the backlog that you could go listen to. Each episode that starts a new book is labeled by title, so do feel free to scroll through the backlog and find something you recognize. I personally suggest Dracula is a really good one. I had a really great time with Alice in Wonderland. The Extra Day was another really good one. A really early pull that I would hardly suggest would be War of the Worlds. That was actually our first episode of the show. While I'm plugging things, I will once again plug that I have a Discord. Not only is this linked frequently in the Twitch chat, it is also linked in the show notes, every episode of the show notes. If you would like to join us in the Discord to talk about the books we're reading, the things I've been working on, the things you've been working on, to post pictures of your pets, to see pictures of whatever sewing projects I'm working on, pictures of each week's loaf of bread. There's all sorts of this and that comes up in the Discord, so I'd heartily suggest you join it if you need more people to talk to. Let's see, YouTube, podcast. Oh, YouTube, I haven't promoted the YouTube. Much like the podcast feed, I have a YouTube channel under the same name, Glacier Nestor, where you can find a wide variety of previous streams. Not only paper cuts, but also VODs from other streams as well. For example, I mentioned sewing projects. I've been doing a lot of visible mending, and several of the VODs on the YouTube channel focus on that visible mending. So if you want to sit and sew along with me, you want to see what I've been working on, you want to hang out while we play video games, you want to listen to me weaving my own stories with some solo tabletop games, it's all there. And there is, I believe, 4 days of audio alone for books and visual novels, let alone the broader swath of other stream VODs and other projects that I've done. So there's plenty of content if you need something to fill your time, and I'd be happy to entertain. I think that's everything of mine that I need to promote. So I will once again remind you, now that we've come to the end of our show, Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Pacific, we will be streaming something that is not Paper Cuts, and Friday nights at 8 p.m. Pacific, we will be streaming something that is Paper Cuts. So that is, once again, 8 p.m. Pacific on Tuesday and Friday nights for non-Paper Cuts and Paper Cuts streams, respectively, and you'll be able to find all those live streams at twitch.tv/glaciernester. Once again, that's twitch.tv/glaciernester. There is an underscore between Glacier and Nestor. And that's actually a really good pattern to find me broadly on most websites. I am usually accessible at glacier_nestor, but where websites do not allow underscores in their usernames, it's usually just Glacier Nestor or Glacier Space Nestor. So with that pattern, you can find me practically everywhere. With all that said, I really appreciate you tuning in. I can't wait to see where can't wait to show you all where this story goes next time. This has been Paper Cuts, and I hope it didn't stick.